Hello, and welcome to Being Human. If you're new here, or if you're returning and you haven't yet, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you do not miss any future content coming from Being Human. On this episode of the podcast, I sat down with James Mistry. James is a photographer, videographer, content creator, a prominent member of MMA media, and even though we had a bit of a debate about this, even though he himself wouldn't label himself as this, I certainly would. An MMA journalist. Mistry's job takes him all over the world, covering the biggest and best combat sports events. He's covered everything from the Ngannou and Fury fight just a few weeks ago to the BMF title fight in Madison Square Garden a few years ago. He's interacted and interviewed with the likes of Conor McGregor, Khabib Nurmagomedov, Francis Ngannou, as we just mentioned. Really is at the pinnacle of his craft and has some amazing opportunities on the regular to speak with the best fighters on the planet. We talked a lot about what that's like, how impressive it is, and how it is difficult sometimes to stay present in such an awesome, such a monumental and surreal situation. We talked about what Conor McGregor is like in real life, what Khabib's like in real life, what it was like for him to witness his close friend Tom Aspinall recently capture the UFC heavyweight interim title. We also discussed what percentage of UFC fighters are on steroids, how Mistry got into this job and broke into the industry in the way that he has. We talked a whole lot about MMA, and of course, with this being human, not just MMA, but philosophy, psychology, God, religion, spirituality, all of that usual stuff too. This was a long one. We really could have kept on talking all night. So buckle in. I hope you enjoy it. If you do, please make sure to hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and share too. Thank you for watching, and thank you for supporting Being Human.
Are you sure?
Have some of that. Yeah.
I'll be polite with it.
Mate, it probably gets in my lungs. When I went on that stag do, obviously I don't smoke or anything, but just being around the smoking area for like 3-4 days, I noticed a difference.
No way.
Yeah,
Did you really?
Back. Yeah. Well, it's hard to tell, but like I got back last week and I didn't drink, didn't smoke, and I was blowing, and it did feel like
something was cleaning out.
Yeah, it did feel like part of it was respiratory.
Yeah. Because I've gone on to this now for about 2 months now. I've not had any cigarettes at all, and my cardio definitely, I feel an improvement.
An improvement?
Yeah.
I was switching from cigarettes to that.
Yeah, which is
okay.
That doesn't mean that my cardio is at optimal level.
Yeah.
It just means that it's
that's
not
better
as bad
for you.
Well, that's what
cigarettes.
it feels like. Yeah. I don't know if it is or it isn't, but I mean, I'm sure it's a percentage less. You know, it's got to be 50% or less worse than a cigarette. Like the actual hot heat of a burning flame that's producing smoke that you inhale. Obviously, it's somewhat similar, but it's extremely less damaging chemicals. But I want to wean off it all together completely. But I think like since doing jiu-jitsu, that's really been the eye-opener for me, like of understanding where my cardio is at. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was away.
I'll let you know.
Yeah. Like, so when I'd go
wrestling,
away,
fighting with a man like full on 100%,
mate, big time in it. So when I was, I'd go away for like 2 or 3 weeks with work, and then I'd come back, and then I'd have naturally been like quite unhealthy whilst I was away, like, you know, like smoking and eating shit, and then I come back and I can like one round and I'm like, God, I don't know if I've got any more in me. And now I've stopped smoking, and I'll have a 3-week break, improved health, not optimized perfectly still, but improved, and I come back and I can do 3 comfortably now, like 3 5-minute rounds comfortably. But then when I'm watching everybody now, this is my next stage I've got to go. But then when class ends and I'm watching motherfuckers do the open match straight after, and I'm like, yo, fuck, I really want to do it, but I can't.
Something about human nature, isn't it?
Yeah.
We always want the next stage.
100%.
No matter where you're at, you're always going to look above, and
that's it.
You know, there's always going to be another summit, and you're going to look at it and think, I want to go there now.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. That's life as well, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
And I always believe that, and as a kid, I feel like, you know, that saying, like, aim for the stars and you'll reach the ceiling.
Land on the moon.
Yeah, or
shoot
something
for the
like
stars
that.
And you might land on the moon.
Exactly, yeah. So true, mate. It's so true.
It is. Yeah, I think, because my philosophy is everything I do it, not just 100%, I do it with the mindset that I want to be the best in the world at it. And I've got the rationality to know I'm not going to be the best in the world at what I do. In anything, I don't think. No matter what I do, whether it's podcasting, jiu-jitsu, I don't think I'm going to be the best in the world. But that's
interesting. Why?
Because
I thought you would. I thought you would think you did. I feel like, because you know when you go into a fight, this is interesting. Like when you go into a fight though, and you have to have that mindset that I'm the best in the world, or that I'm 100% going to beat this guy. Because you can't go into that. What's the point in going into a fight like thinking I'm going to lose mentally? They're like, what's the point? I don't get it.
Yeah. So, like I said, I have that rationality where I know I'm not going to be the best in the world at any one thing. The reason I'd say that is because I'm not spreading myself too thin, but I do a lot of different things that aren't conducive to one another. So even like take the physical things that I do, mountaineering, fell running, and jiu-jitsu. Even though they're both in the physical realm, they're still very different sports, and one doesn't necessarily improve the other.
No.
Obviously, running up mountains improves my fitness, which helps cardio for jiu-jitsu, but at the same time, it's wrecking your knees, which isn't good for jiu-jitsu. And if you're spending, 9 hours on a Sunday running up mountains, you're not spending 9 hours on the mats getting better at your technique.
True.
So that's why I would say, like, I don't think I'm going to be the best in the world at anything that I'm doing right now, because I'm not all in on any one thing, because I'm doing too many things.
I would say as well, to slightly counter it, that you're quite young, and at this stage in your life, it's somewhat about throwing as much shit on the wall as you can, and then seeing what sticks. And maybe you're going through that process of just throwing shit on the wall right now, like what's going to work for you,
I think so.
And then in a few years you'll realize, like, oh, that one on the wall over there, that stuck.
Yeah.
And then you'll become the best in the world. I think like 30 to 50 is when you'll become the best in the world at what you do.
Depends though, right? Because not at something like jiu-jitsu. You're not going to become the best in the world.
Well, how old Gordon Ryan?
Gordon Ryan, he's a lot younger than he looks. Gordon Ryan's only 28, I want to say.
Is he really?
Yeah, he's only 28. So he became a black belt when he was about 20, I think.
Okay, yeah, there's definitely a few industries that rely on your body and things like that.
Yeah, so the physical pursuit. Mountaineering's an interesting one though, because, I mean, you'll see mountaineers that are still, scaling 8,000 meter peaks into their 40s, 50s. I mean, my granddad did Mont Blanc when he was 60 years old. That was the biggest mountain he ever did. So mountaineering is a bit different, weirdly, because your like steady state long endurance seems to peak a lot later than things like speed, even strength. So totally. It does depend, depending on the sport, the kind of physical endeavour.
And also as a complete topic that you're doing as well. Like for me, I remember, because this topic's interesting to talk about, because I've had this discussion many times with different people, especially when I was growing up, because I got into all of this because a bit by accident, but I was like an arty guy growing up, like doing like art fashion, art-based photography, street photography. And when I was doing that and I was looking at the practitioners in my field that I looked up to, they were all 50, 60, something years old. Like they like peaked in the art world later. So I was always of the assumption that, as I'm doing this, like I've got like 20 to 30 years to make it. Like that's how I thought about my world. But then like when you look at someone like Jake Wills, for example, who's 16, 17 years old, and he's got somewhat of a similar mentality at such a young age, like it blows my mind in a really healthy, positive way to see kids these days with that type of maturity. And it's something that I never had, and it's something that I think we get as we get a little bit older, definitely me. So to see it on somebody so young in a sport that needs you to be so young and on it at such a good time. Like that inspires me. Do you know what I mean?
100%. And I think that's an interesting point as well, that MMA is at the point now where it's become an established sport enough where it's becoming more like football, rugby, where if you're going to go pro and you're going to become world class, you have to start at a young age. Before, because it was the Wild West, and Jiu-Jitsu is kind of joining MMA with this, because it was the Wild West, there's not a structured system. Kids don't grow up learning how to do a rear naked choke and how to throw a punch like they do how to kick a football. There was the opportunity for people to get into it, when I say later in life, later in their athletic development, so early 20s, late 20s, even early 30s. Whereas now, because it's becoming more of a mainstream sport, people are starting a lot younger, and that door for a 25-year-old to just walk into an MMA gym and potentially go pro and potentially go to the UFC, I think those days are over for MMA, and they're closing for jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I think they're closing on both parts. I think if you've got the talent, you ultimately you'll get there. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, if you are 22 and you somehow have never done any martial arts in your life, and come 25, 26, you're like in there looking like Jimmy or Josh for them. You know what I mean? Sometimes God just gives it you, or whatever you want to say.
Some people, like John Jones, I think John Jones probably could have started MMA at any age.
100%. But then like the normal practitioner
would have been amazing.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Yeah, sorry, I'm talking over you.
No, it's okay. No.
Schoolboy.
You're supposed to be the pro. But yeah, just to cycle back to the original point about attacking what I do with the mentality that I'm going to be the best in the world, even though I don't rationally think I will end up being. I have that mentality for jiu-jitsu, and even though I don't think I'm going to end up being the best in the world at jiu-jitsu, I think I can make a good run at it, and compete on big stages, because that window is still slightly open for people like me who started jits early 20s as opposed to teenage years, for us to still make it. Whereas I think in 5 years' time, someone like me who only started jiu-jitsu in their early 20s, they won't have enough time to catch up with the people that have been doing it since they were 10 years old, 12 years old. So yeah, I tend to think about things in a rational way, but also be very ambitious with my mentality.
Definitely, and I think that's very sensible. I do feel though, like, no matter what anybody says, I do feel like it comes down to how much you want it. Age, like all of that. Like, I do agree with everything you've said, but there are a few like slots available for the odd anomaly that wants it that bad. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That person that like, no, I want, not like the kind of person like, yeah, I think I can be best in the world. I'm going to try my hardest to be best in the world. Not that guy, but the guy that is like, no, I'm fucking going to be the best in the world. I'm going to change my life around it. And that's all I'm thinking about. Best in the world, best in the world, best. Some of those people, there are some of those people that exist that fail and fall off. And they had that drive, that heart, that mentality. But from my life experience, I can't help but feel that the universe will test you so many times and put you in a position where it wants you to stop. And then if you stop, brilliant for the universe. But then
do you think God, the universe, do you think when it sends you, when he, she, whoever sends you those challenges, do you think it has a little giggle when you do stop? Or do you think it's like,
no, I
wanted you to overcome that?
Yeah, definitely. So I think it'd actually be disappointment. Like, okay, don't worry.
Yeah, next time around.
Yeah,
like
not even next time, next person.
Yeah.
Next person. I don't think it would sit and dwell on whether it's ultimately just a test. How much do you want it? You said you wanted it this much. You said you wanted it this much. Now, do you still want it? I'm going to put a challenge in front of you. No, okay. Oh, this guy continued. Okay, cool. And eventually you're going to have one or two.
If you don't want it, there's going to be someone.
Yeah. And he'll give you like 3 or 4 challenges that will make you think it's over. And if you stay, then all of a sudden things get better. It's really, like, I know that sounds really simplistic,
but it's true.
But
that's my experience.
It feels like it's
so
true.
Far.
It feels like it's true for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And like you said, against what we're talking about when your prime years are, there are always anomalies. Look at Glover Teixeira. He won the belt at 42 years old after he lost to Jones. Yeah. He was on a decline. No one expected him in more than, in 10 years' time, basically, to be back in the position of having a title shot and then winning the title. Yeah. Michael Bisping, at the tail end of his career with one eye, ends up winning the belt. And it is that delusional belief. And I do think you have to... Being deluded in life as a whole is not a healthy mindset to be in. So. But for competition, whatever it is, whether it's MMA, another sport, whatever your competitive endeavour is, delusion will help you. If you can delude your... And I think Conor McGregor is maybe the best illustration of this point, how it can end up being a detriment to you in life as a whole, but wow, it can be a powerful, powerful force for you as a professional, as a competitor.
There's a lot of people that have unwavering self-belief, and Paddy Pimblett's another one of those guys that a lot of people, I hear a lot of guys say just like, yeah, Paddy's not as good as they think, as people say he is, blah blah blah. But with his skill set, which is phenomenal, and with that mentality, they are a dangerous pair. They really are. When you truly believe it, like Paddy does, like Conor does, that's when it's like dangerous. And like you said, it's a delusion that in some ways it is a delusion, but in some ways it's not a delusion. Do you know what I mean? It's a delusion because we don't know it at the moment. Only they are aware of it. But is it still a delusion when they are the world champion and they are the best in the world? And was it a delusion this whole time, or was it real? Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, was Conor McGregor deluded, or was he right? Or was he right all along?
Was God whispering in his ear, and it was like, okay, yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to do it.
Yeah. It's interesting.
It is. On the note of Paddy Pimblett, I'm going to put you on the spot. Well, I'm going to say a statement. Tell me whether you agree, and I'll ask you a question off the back of that. Paddy Pimblett at the moment is not good enough to win a UFC title. What do you think he needs to do to become good enough? So tell me if you agree with that statement, and then depending on whether you do or not, answer the follow-up question.
Based on what we've just spoken about right now, I would say, yeah, I don't agree with that. I would say that he is capable of winning a championship right now. But I would say that about anybody in the top 15. I know Paddy's not ranked just yet, is he? Or is he?
I think if he is, he's
going to be 15,
like 14th or 15th. Yeah.
I think any of those guys have it in them to do it, come rain or shine. Look at Strickland and Adesanya. He wasn't even supposed to get a title shot, was he? It was a last minute thing. And if you'd asked me, does Strickland win a championship in his division, I would have said no. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
I don't think anyone would have said yes. Yeah. Nobody saw that.
No, nobody. So, what these guys put themselves through, I get to see glimpses of it every day. And with those glimpses that I do see, I do believe that all of these guys can be champion. And in terms of what he has to do to get better, I'd just say nothing in particular other than maintaining that outlook on life that I want to be the best. As soon as that hunger subsides, that's when the issues will start creeping in. Do you know what I mean? When you get comfortable, and at the moment, Paddy's hungry as a motherfucker. Do you know what I mean? So at the moment, probably now's a better time than ever for him to win a championship belt, really. It's just perspective, I suppose, different perspectives and things like that. But no, I'd say he's more than capable.
Let's take it back to the start then.
Yeah.
What originally got you into MMA? And was it as a fan, or did it come from your work? You mentioned being an arty guy, even from when you were young. Did you get into MMA through content creation, or were you a fan first and then the professional side of things came after?
Yeah, I was a fan first. And I wish I could say that I got into it earlier than the era I'm going to tell you that I did get into it, but I didn't. But it was around the McGregor, Chad Mendes kind of era, and the Bisping winning his belt kind of era. Obviously, McGregor came first. And then as I started getting into it more and more, it's like, oh shit, okay, cool. My first ever UFC event I ever went to was UFC 204. So that puts into perspective as well that it's like quite an...
Was that Woodley Till?
No, it was Bisping Henderson too.
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
up in Manchester.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, yeah.
And I didn't have any friends that were interested in martial arts. I had one, and I'd kind of groomed him into mixed martial arts because I worked with him, and I had my own business, and it was like creating social media content for like local businesses, essentially. Shit. And and I had Jamie, who I'd worked with in one of my old jobs in a photography studio. And when I set up my business, I brought Jamie in, and we had a studio, and every day I'd just put on podcasts, MMA related podcasts. And I used to watch Embeddeds at work, and I used to just think like, fuck, how do I get a job like that? Like, and I'd dream about it, and then I'd wash my dreams away, just like, mate, you live in Leicester. These vacancies are out in Las Vegas for a start. What are you going to do? You're going to move, they're going to see your CV, some lad in Leicester that's just fucking reels for restaurants, and they're going to be like, yeah, let's get it. Like, no, that's not going to happen. So just get over it. Just think of something else and just enjoy martial arts. And then I was just like, I really want to get it. I wouldn't mind trying some jiu-jitsu, and I wouldn't mind trying some striking. So I saw one of my mates who actually went to school with. I never actually saw him at the school, but we went to the same school. His name's Dan Hepworth, obviously the guys know. I saw he was fighting on Instagram, having fights, and I messaged him, and I was like, can I get a private with you? So I started doing some weightlifting with Dan Hepworth, and then I was like, man, I really want to do some jiu-jitsu. Can we add some jiu-jitsu on the end of these privates? And he would like walk me through like anacondas and stuff like this. And then
where was this? Sorry, was this at Muscle Machine?
It was, mate. Yeah, it was at Muscle Machine in Leicester. And then he was just like, you know where you need to go? You need to go see Jimmy Warhead. That would be best for you. And I was like, all right, cool. Like, obviously I knew who Jimmy was, but for some reason the two didn't click because my head wasn't fully in the martial arts world properly.
But you knew who Jimmy was.
I knew who Jimmy was. Yeah.
So you built up you must have gone like straight in deep dive on MMA when you discovered it.
Yeah.
Because obviously there's a big difference between not jumping on the bandwagon, but you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, totally.
The big McGregor rise.
Yeah.
You know, becoming a big UFC fan.
Yeah.
And then also quickly knowing who Jimmy Warhead was. Because I'll admit, I've been a fan of the UFC since 2010, 2011 when Jones first won the title. And when I rocked up at Hardy Warhead for the first few weeks, I had no idea.
Did you know? Yeah.
I had no idea that the man teaching me was Jimmy Warhead and who Jimmy Warhead was.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? How that's happened to me in certain situations as well. And I've been like, oh, that's it. Oh shit.
I should know who that is.
Yeah. But so I actually, the first time I came down and introduced myself as Jimmy was that kind of like, and I know this sounds a bit seedy and creepy, but I kind of mapped in my head like a way, because I used to say to myself like,
you knew what you wanted.
I knew what I wanted to do, mate. I knew it. And I was just like, wish I had a time machine to go back and like go to McGregor versus Brandao or McGregor's last fight in Cage Warriors, and I just wanted to like be like, hey, I'll make you videos, and like, do you know what I mean? Like, I wish I had an opportunity to go in there and be his cameraman. That's how I entered martial arts, thinking about what do I want to do? Well, I want to be someone's cameraman. That would be sick. So that's how I was thinking. I was like, okay, well, maybe there's a way to get to Darren Till. So I was like, well, maybe if I go here, then a link will open up here, and then maybe a link will open up here, and then I can go to Darren. That's like how I was thinking. And Jimmy was No, Dan invited me down. I made Dan a really cool video. Still probably one of the best videos I think I've ever made in martial arts.
And this was Dan Hardy, sorry.
No, this was Dan
Hepworth.
Yeah. And then that's when I met Jimmy, and then Jimmy was like, "Oh, can you make me some videos?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So then I started training a bit more. Then I was actually going down and I was training, and Jimmy was teaching me, and I was loving it. I thought it was so cool. And then Jimmy started telling me that him and Dan were gonna open a gym together. And I was like, sick. Well, maybe I could do like social media for your accounts or something. And Jimmy was like, yeah, that sounds like a really good idea, actually. Let me speak to Dan. So then they spoke, and then I was at training one day, and then we were drilling some submissions, and Jimmy just came over to me and he was just like, what are you doing tomorrow? He was like, Dan wants to see you tomorrow. And I was like, what?
And this was Dan Hardy.
Yeah, this is now Dan Hardy. And I was like, what? Dan Hardy wants to see me tomorrow. I was like, fuck, wicked. And I was just thinking in my head, like, oh, sick, I'm going to be able to like make Dan some cool content for the gym or whatever. And so I go around, and so I pull up the next day, and Dan sent me his address. And I remember this for the rest of my life. And I pulled up and I was just like, where the fuck is his house, man? Because he lives in a cool little house, doesn't look like a house. It's like an old church style thing that he's renovated. And I was just looking around, I was like, where the fuck is it? And I heard this voice shout, James. And it was Dan, and he was like hung over his fence with a spliff in his mouth. And I was like, yes. He's like, yeah, come around this way. And I was like, wow. So I go into his house, and like Dan's probably the first person I ever met in MMA on a personable note like that, like of of a really strong caliber, like
that was
this big,
famous,
big, yeah. And he was so welcoming when we come in, and then I remember like just being so starstruck, and I found it so hard to listen to him because I was I'm in Dan Hardy's house, and I'm like, and he's talking to me about something important. Maybe you should listen. Oh yeah. that's my internal monologue. Because especially because he gave me some weed, so I was like, I was even more like in my own head just looking at him. But we hit it off really well, and then within the space of like, what I came down for was to talk about the gym and whatever, and Dan had bigger and better ideas, and I was just like, all right, yeah, let's do it. So we actually started up the channel, me, Dan, Jamie, Owen, and a few others, and we just got it going.
The Full Reptile.
We got it going, yeah. We just set it up and we got it going, and we were really lucky because during that time we didn't have any funding. Dan was paying us out of his own pocket, and with the belief and the idea that we'd get sponsorship, and we did really quickly, like because of Dan's name, obviously. We didn't have any subscribers, but we got on a massive sponsor that enabled us to do all of the things that we wanted to do, and that's how I got into MMA and how I got into MMA.
Yeah. That's how you then got into. Would you define what you do as MMA journalism?
I wouldn't.
No.
And I actually feel guilty sometimes when people say that, surprisingly.
Why wouldn't you?
I don't see myself, like, journalism is a pretty tight-knit community of like nerds and people, and like I'm having to like censor myself a little bit. I'll put it like this, right? It's a tight-knit community of people that care passionately about their work, and they went to university for their work, and they consider themselves journalists. And then when somebody like me who pulls up, who is cool with a camera and can speak to fighters, I wouldn't necessarily call that journalism. Like, I mean, maybe it's evolved into a new form of journalism, but the typical journalism of writing articles and being good at English for a start, and all those other like nuanced things that what it means to be a journalist, I don't do any of them. Like, the only reason people could call me a journalist is because I've asked a question. And I don't agree necessarily that that makes me a journalist. And people have said to me on like, and obviously it comes from like friends or like the odd notable person, like Richard Shaw said recently to me, like, best journalist in MMA, I am. And I was like, I felt weird about sharing it because journalists follow me. I know I'm not the best journalist in MMA, and I don't even think I'm a journalist, but I did share it. And then like, then I've got people like Mike Bond from like USA Today and MMA Junkie and Ariel Helwani, like looking at my stories thinking, he ain't a fucking journalist. Like I'm not saying that's what they think, but in my head I'm thinking,
that's what you're thinking.
so I don't consider myself a journalist. I think it's just what people associate that type of person stood there to be doing is journalism. Like, what other thing could you be if you're at a UFC press conference and you're asking questions? Well, you must be a journalist. Like, who else gets to ask questions? Just journalists, right? So I think that's where the misunderstanding comes from. But at the same time, it's not like a bad misunderstanding. It's just something that I've thought about for a while, and I've realized I'm not a journalist. I don't want to pretend to be a journalist. I don't want to say I'm a journalist. So now I've come out with the idea that I'm just a MMA content creator, and that in itself takes on a few different roles. Sometimes I have to be a journalist, sometimes I have to be an editor, sometimes I have to be a cameraman, sometimes I have to be like the guy that's building rapport with people. Do you know what I mean? Like the psychology side of what it is being human in martial arts. And yeah, that's it. So no, I don't consider myself. What is that? What you asked me? Do you consider yourself a journalist? No, I don't. No.
Okay. I would say you are.
Yeah.
Not that I'm an expert on journalism, but I would say you're the journalist of today. I think you're right. Traditional journalism was very different, but that was a different time. Yeah, I'll definitely, from my perspective, what you do is MMA journalism.
Yeah.
And I think if the traditional journalism guys who did, an English language degree at university or did a journalism degree at university, whatever it was, get their back up about the fact, he doesn't use Queen's English, that's their issue. Yeah. We're living in a different time now.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, things are far less prescriptive. Things are far less institutionalized and centralized through the use of social media. I think that's a big thing, social media, more than anything, technology and social media in particular. And because of that, a lot of traditional definitions now have kind of been wiped off the table.
Yeah, I agree with that, to be honest. Yeah. I had a point I was going to say, but it slipped my mind now. Yeah, it's gone.
So I suppose the answer to this question I've got written down is...
That's what I was going to say. Sorry.
That's all right.
I kind of like... I feel like what I'm doing as well is like... It can be looked at as journalism because I'm capturing like real moments, like video moments. But in a way, like, is a they are. Like Louis Theroux makes documentaries. He's a journalist, right? But he also comes from a traditional sense of journalism as well. But what I think I'm doing is making like bite-sized 60-second glimpses of what could be a documentary, but more of a like instant reactional piece from like Tom Aspinall just won the belt. I made like a 30-second, 40-second clip, which was very short, but it looked like you could watch it about 50 times because there was so much going on at the same time. And on my Instagram, I call myself a look, see, do.
I saw MMA that, and I love that because that's how John Jones has him. And is that where you got it from?
That's exactly where I got it from, because that's what I feel I'm doing. Yeah. Like, you put me in an environment, I'll look, see, and do. Like,
and I've got to be honest. For the longest time, I always heard it when they announced John Jones, and I thought it was like some weird branch of traditional martial art. Look, see, do. I was like, it's a form of kung fu.
Yeah, totally.
And then I saw you have it in your bio, and I was like, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So I kind of stole that from John, but only because it fitted well with what I'm doing. Because you put me in a room like it's behind the scenes of a weigh-ins are about to happen. I'm not gonna like make like. This is another thing that I've had to learn as well. And I know I'm going off in a bit of a tangent here.
No,
but,
not at all.
like when I first got into like, I got into video really late. Like, I knew I could do it because I could do photography, and that's what I was mainly doing: photography. And Jamie showed me some of his videos that he had done for people, and I was like, shit, this is well good. And I don't mean this like, if you can do it, I can do it. But like, I was thinking like, shit, if you can do that, I can do that, we can do that. So then I was just like, okay, video. And then from there, that kind of opened up so many new doors for me that I was like, okay, I'm going to put down the photography and we're going to go into video and take the same premises that I learned in photography, which was a similar look-see-do kind of thing, especially in street photography. Like, it would be like in New York, I'd be like stood on the side of a street, and this is where I learned to go up to people and talk to people. It was all through this kind of training. Like,
okay, because I was going to ask you about that. You're incredibly good at being able to get the best out of people, and not just striking up conversation. That doesn't do justice to what you're good at. You're not just good at striking up conversation, you're good at building a rapport with people very quickly and then being able to basically extract the truth out of them, extract their genuine self out of them. Because everyone's got a facade. Everyone's got, you know what I mean, the ego, self, whatever you want to call it up. And you're very good, I think, at being able to pull them through that. So
yeah, I appreciate that.
Is that where you say you've
well,
got,
yeah, to a certain degree, it's definitely the courage to do that came from that. Like, you know, New York was one of those places where I fell in love with really early, and it taught me so much about myself and holding a camera, like the physical emotions of dealing with the anxiety of like holding a camera in a space that you don't really want to hold a camera. Do you know what I mean?
Because it must feel quite unnatural, I imagine.
Oh, totally. First. Yeah, definitely. Like but it's only when you go home and you watch a photo go away from you because you didn't have the courage to go. That's what I didn't have the courage to do. And that's when I go home, I'm like, what a pussy. Why didn't you do that?
Just because
they're not following you home. They're never even going to see you again. Why don't you just do it next time? So I was just like, okay, fine, I'll do it. I used to like love capturing like raw shit, street stuff on the street, raw photos of whatever was going on. And I used to like, to get me going, I'd stand in a specific corner of the street and I'd find like a cool shadow on the floor and I'd wait for people to walk through the shadow, and I'd like, so like maybe half their face is black and then like the other face is in the light, but they're walking and got a fag in their mouth or something. And I used to watch these pictures go by because I felt like they gave me some eye contact. And then I'd go home and I'd edit and I'd think about the pictures that I didn't take more than the ones I did. And so I started learning like, hey, fuck it, what's the worst that can happen? They're going to tell you to delete it. Okay, we'll delete it then, so what? So then I just started like getting comfortable, being uncomfortable in these situations. And I'd just take these pictures. And there was times where I didn't really enjoy taking the picture, but when I'd go home, the picture that I least enjoyed taking the most gave me the biggest reward at home when those people weren't around anymore. It doesn't even matter what they think of me. They can think I'm a weirdo, whatever. Like, they don't know me. I'm home with this great photo that nobody's questioned how I've got, really. Some people might, but that really taught me to just stand in the middle of it and just film. And that's all I do now. Like, when I think, like, sometimes I'm like looking at what I do and I think like, man, I think I've just cheat coded my way here, like with little tactics, and it's worked for me though. And then other people like you will like put like this bow on like what I'm doing and say this, but when I look at it, it just looks like a rusty, cheaty little wire with a hack on the, you know what I mean? Like
because it does. To us, it looks like, you know what I mean? You do it all so gracefully.
Yeah.
But I think that's the mark of anyone that's really good at their craft. They make it look effortless.
Yeah.
When really, there's not just a lot of effort in it. Like you said, it's not a straight line. It's messy.
Yeah, it is very messy.
Yeah, but being able to make that look clean and natural.
Yeah, totally, man. And And then I just thought, fuck, I just need to get into martial arts. And that was the only thing that I cared about. I just need to somehow get into martial arts. And I was just so thankful for Jimmy. Like, without Jimmy and Dan, like, I wouldn't have the life I have. Without Jimmy opening that door for me to meet Dan, and then Dan opening the second door for me to run through. And yeah, it was crazy. And I genuinely mean it from the bottom of my heart. Like, I owe it to those guys. I like proper owe it to them. Actually, I had a chat with Dan in Saudi. It was really, really nice to see him. And I was telling him that, and he was like, no, I opened the door, but you ran through it. I was like, mate, you like helped me run through the door as well. It wasn't like, just totally, man. Yeah. And like, he guided me through into the room. Do you know what I mean? For me to do all of those things, and I'm just like, I just hope that they know and understand that, you know, like, I really truly do owe everything to them, and anything that I can do to help in any of their lives, I want to, and I want to be there, and I feel in debt, like massively indebted to those guys, really do. So that's how, that fucking messy tangent and how I got into MMA, but that's it.
I've got written down here who was the first big fighter, like famous fighter that you interviewed. I suppose the answer really is Jimmy and Dan, but you talk about Dan opening that door, you running through it. You run through the door into the room that is professional mixed martial arts, not just professional mixed martial arts.
Yeah, it was like the
world class.
Yeah,
mixed martial arts, the UFC, you know, the Goliath, the Mammoth, however you want to call it.
Like, can I tell you a quick story?
Yeah, of course.
So I used to ponder about this like all the time. Like, I really did, mate. Like, I want to get to the UFC. That was my dream job, and I just didn't understand how to get it. And I can't explain to you enough how much I used to think in my office about wanting to work in the UFC, like daily. But I knew it wasn't possible. I know I've touched on this part a little bit, but when I got back from uni, like, I wrote on the back of my bedroom door a few things, because my bedroom door at home with my mum and dad's has just got drawings on and whatever, because when I was growing up, my mum used to like measure my height on the door like every month. So my height is all on the door. There's like stickers on my door or whatever. And I actually wrote near the handle, get to the UFC, see a UFC fight live in Vegas. And that was it. So it wasn't too much, but when Dan took me to my first, this is what was weird about it, is I forgot I even wrote it, and I swear to God I forgot I even wrote it until I saw it when I came back from the trip and shut my bedroom door, and I was like,
wow,
oh my God, that's fucking
that
weird.
Must have been, so you'd forgotten.
I'd forgotten about it,
and it was only when you came back.
Yeah.
But it was when you came back from the UFC that you then closed your door and saw it again for the first time in years.
4 or 5. And I was just like, whoa, that's fucking weird. And it was to the point where I felt like, even if I was telling my mates that story, it would just sound wishy-washy.
It sounds like, well, it's incredibly poetic.
Yeah,
people wouldn't believe that. No.
And I remember like being there in Vegas, just like sensory overload, just like, how am I here? How am I here? Why am I here? Who gave me this? Like, what? I don't even deserve to be here. Why am I here? I've just been thinking about being here. That's all I've done. How has that got me here? Like, I was just like so confused. But happy.
What event was this? So obviously UFC 204 was the first event you went to, but you just went as a fan, bought your own ticket. This was the first event you went to as an MMA?
Well, this is the first event I went to Vegas.
Yeah.
It wasn't the first event I had done. I think the first event I ever did was UFC London, working it, was UFC London, Till vs Masvidal. That was the very first one I did.
Wow, what an event.
Yeah, it was.
To do for your first one.
I know, mate, it was wild.
And then what was the one in Vegas?
Do you know what? I actually can't remember what the one was in Vegas. Because there were so many trips to Vegas straight after that
you've done so many now that, it must be hard to keep up with them.
Yeah, no, it is. It really is. yeah, for the life of me, I can't remember what the first one was in Vegas. It might have been. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. I can't remember. I'd have to check online to see what it was, but it wasn't necessarily who was fighting that was so poignant to me. It was
the event as
the
a whole.
event as a whole. The fact, just seeing the UFC. I remember those first times of like being around the UFC and just seeing the logo would blow my mind. Do you know what I mean? I'd fly over to like Vegas and there'll be like a UFC poster in the airport or something, and I'd be like, whoa, we're here, we're closer. And you drive past the UFC PI with the UFC logo on the building, and you're just like, shit, this is it. This is where I've seen all those videos of Embedded and like, you know, all of that stuff. And it was just wild, man. I really like was grateful throughout. It was one of the moments in my life where I really learnt about gratitude and like how important it is to have gratitude and to like, and now I'm one of those people that like, and I see a lot of other people in the industry and they don't have any gratitude. They're just like on the ship sailing. They're happy, but they're on their directional ship going to where they want to go, and they'll probably do their gratitude when they get there type of thing.
Yeah, but you never get that.
But exactly.
You
So yeah, exactly. So I do my gratitude like when I feel it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I absolutely love taking myself out of an exciting situation just to go stand outside, have a cigarette or whatever for 2 minutes, and just like, there's the amount of times I'd be like in the middle of like the media day and there's like a half-hour break and you've just had like McGregor come through, you've had Donald's to run, all these guys, and you just like, you want 5 minutes just to go outside and sit down and just look around
just
you
take yourself
and just
out
be
the
like,
bubble and then look into it from a third person perspective.
Exactly. That's the best way I've heard anyone say what I'm trying to do there. That's exactly what I'm doing, and it gives you a superpower. Like, I feel like I've just had 10 monster energies when I come back inside, and then I'm like, well, I want to fucking smash this. Let's do it. This is so sick. Can't believe I'm here. And it's so important to keep that I can't believe I'm here type attitude. Not like in 5 years, oh yeah, I've been here, now I'm just here doing my steps. It's like every time I go away, I want to feel, and I search for that, can't believe I'm here. Whether it's like a 2-second moment or a 2-minute moment, every day at some point in the day, I'll try and go get that out of my day. And that's one of the weird shit things I have with smoking, is that I learned to kind of get that out of smoking, like, and I don't think that's obvious. Like, obviously I'm having like one healthy psychological experience, but at the same time, what I'm getting out of that is killing me as well. So I'm just like,
that's so interesting that you say that, because I remember someone saying, I used to work at the Tesco near where I live, and they were a smoker, they were talking about going out for a fag break, and they said, you know what, I think non-smokers could take a page out of smokers' books. Like, go outside, you don't need the cigarette.
Yeah.
Just like, rather than waiting all day for your half-hour break, just take 5 minutes outside, like, and gain some perspective, chill out a bit, whatever it is you need. And it is true.
It's so true. And like, you know, I always used to describe it as like having a friend with you. Like, if I would be in New York and I'd never seen the Statue of Liberty and I wanted to go look at the Statue of Liberty and I didn't smoke, I'd arrive, I'd look at it. Well, that's pretty cool. Now what do I do? Let's go somewhere else. But if I've got a cigarette, I go there and I'm like, oh, cool, there's Statue of Liberty. Well, a cigarette, have a cigarette. Now I'm forced to stay here for longer because I'm having a moment here. And I get that, and I've learned, a friend with it. Yeah, and I've learned to kind of take that out of smoking, and I don't want to smoke anymore, and I've stopped smoking cigarettes. But there's definitely like a psychological thing that I take out of smoking that I've entwined with my empathy
That's really beautiful, and you're definitely onto something there.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry to cut you
No,
off.
no, absolutely.
Yeah.
Not at all. So when I go out, because when I explain that to people, oh, do you ever do any gratitude? And I always have to say, yeah, well, I go out for a fag. And
yeah. You know what I mean? Oh, that's not great for you're abusing your health.
Isn't it? Well, I feel like a dickhead even saying that. So I have to kind of...
But they don't know, because it's not the action of smoking a cigarette.
It's not.
It's what...
It's being something busy with my hands and knowing that I've got a few minutes here because I'm smoking. Like, it makes you just sit and contemplate because you kind of have to. And if I wasn't smoking, I'd want to be busy. Let's go. I want, oh yeah, I've just seen it. That was wicked. It was beautiful. I've took my picture. Let's go. But I didn't have any time to sit and think in the environment. Not necessarily about the Statue of Liberty or whatever I'm looking at, but just to have this meditative kind of moment in this new environment where you're thinking, I got here like through my work and this is what I'm doing and I'm so happy and I'm so grateful. How do I now keep this going? Like those kind of moments, that's where like I get my gratitude from. And I think it's so healthy other than the smoking side of it. And it's now just learning to find something else or just sit, just like force yourself just to sit and just think and do it.
Just carry out the exact same, and obviously it's easier said than done, but carry out the exact same process just without the cigarette.
Yeah, exactly. Mate. I don't know what your initial question was anymore.
No, I can't remember. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I love, I love
Tangents.
what you've just shared with us. I think that's really important. I think that's really beautiful as well.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah.
I think the question was, who was like the first, I've put big fighter, but let's say current UFC star. Who was the first current UFC star at the time that you interviewed?
Tom Aspinall and Michael Chiesa. That I properly interviewed those
Tom
two.
Aspinall?
Yeah.
Yeah. How long's Tom been in the UFC now?
Not long, 2 years.
Yeah.
But it was only in Fight Island I really kind of
so that was when you started
my talking skills or whatever.
When you started interviewing and asking questions.
Yeah.
Because before it was
previously I was just videoing, and I was just like, I was in these like media days filming and uploading and editing, and then everybody else was asking questions, but we were kind of like just recording everybody else ask questions, taking it and putting it on our thing. And I thought to myself, well, there's a mic on my table. Does that mean I can ask a question? It's like, am I allowed to ask a question? Because I'd never done it before. And so I was just like, yeah, okay, you can ask a question. So I asked my first question one time, got a good response, and I was like, whoa, that's the fucking question.
And what question was that?
I think it was in a media day in Sweden, and I was kind of forced to ask questions because back then, so the media days changed very drastically from how I started media days to how they are now. They used to be, all the fighters would go in one room, all of them, and they would be sat on a stool, and behind them you would have like a big sign, UFC, Tom Aspinall, or whoever the hell sat on the stool. And you would free for all, so you'd be going around the room like, oh, John Jones over there, we need to definitely get an interview with John. So then you'd queue up for John, and when you finish with John, you'd go over here and you'd speak to somebody else, and the whole thing would be done in an hour. But there was something about that environment that I thought was more interesting than just talking to the fighters, because you have got all these media people walking around, they're having conversations. You've got like analysts in there doing the same thing, having conversations. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be a cooler perspective to shoot it through my perspective? Like, okay, well, this is what's happening. So let's do it like behind the scenes of Media Day, where in amongst the chaos, I'll get someone to introduce us. We're at Media Day. We're right here with Tom Aspinall's coach, Andy Aspinall. Let's have a chat with Andy, and then we'll walk off and we'll bump into someone else and we'll do the same thing. And that's how like my media days were. So one time I just queued up for some like little question, and I just asked them. Nobody thought twice about it apart from me. I was, oh God, this is crazy. I've just asked him a bloody question. And And then from there, my confidence just built and built and built. And Dan gave me lots of confidence. Like he was saying, no, you're doing a good job. And I don't know if I believed him or what it was, but eventually I just started doing it, and I got a little bit better at it, I guess. But I mean, even now, I still don't think I'm great at it. I take myself out of it now, and I just ask the question as if they're just a normal person. Like, that was one thing I had trouble with, was knowing that, talking to myself in my head, I talk to myself like a bit of a weirdo sometimes. Of like, I'll be like interviewing someone, and I'll start thinking about thinking. And I was, what the fuck are you thinking about thinking for? You need to think about listening to this guy. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but like, I've just, do you know what I mean? I'm battling this really thick conversation in my head, and it winds me up because it's so stupid as well. And I'm just like, well, concentrate then. Like, you concentrate. Like, I am trying. And then that was like one of the biggest things I struggled with, because I was so in awe of these people, and I was just like, oh my God, there's fucking whoever I'm talking to, and they're looking me in the eyes, and I'm like,
you're so in awe of the present moment.
Yeah,
it was difficult to put yourself in it.
Yeah, 100%, mate. Like, summed it up nicer than I did. Yeah, that was very difficult to get my head around, but I just realized eventually, I think the more you do something, the more you realize, A, nobody cares, even if they're watching you, and 3, you're not that great anyway, so like, relax. Do you know what I mean? Because you're either battling the negative side of your emotions, or you're battling the overly positive side of your emotions.
I wouldn't agree with the second part, because like,
well,
bro, you're great, yeah, I'm not alone in saying this. I think anyone would say, not just people in the gym, but anyone that knows you in the industry. That's another thing that I was going to ask you about, how you're able to ask the questions you are, because I think the two things that make you great at what you do, is that you're so approachable and you're able to, like I said, extract people's genuine personality out of them. And then once you've extracted that out, or while you're extracting that out, you're able to ask questions which really garner good insights. Because not every other, but most MMA media members, it's the same questions, it's the same responses.
Well, the only reason,
and you've definitely shaken that up. The questions you have, yeah. Well, do you have a
there's
process?
a reason.
Where do you get
well,
the
no, there was
from?
a really simple reason that I was doing that, and it wasn't due to anything I'd done myself. I wasn't trying to be smart. I wasn't trying to do anything out of the box. I just wanted to be included in the community, and I was stood on at a desk where I could be included. But everybody else had already asked those questions by the time it was my go.
Okay. Oh, wow. So it arose out of necessity.
As simple as that. So John Morgan would ask his question, Oscar would ask his question, Jose would ask his question. And all 3 of them would probably ask 3 to 4 questions each. That's like 9 or 12 questions that I've got. Now they've all gone.
So I would write my question.
Yeah. So then I was like, I'd have to, if I wanted to be included in the community, we either shut up, take what you've been given, or think outside the box. And I didn't even really think I was thinking outside the box per se. I just thought I was asking a different question. That's how I looked at it. It was just like, well, they've not asked this, and I've forgot he did this then, and then blah 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 blah. So let's ask him about that. It was literally that simple. And then people would come up to me like, "Oh mate, your questions are well good." They like pop out. I'm like, "Oh, like, cool."
I think the necessity of it definitely put you in a position to ask a different question. But I think what enabled you to kind of like pull the trigger, so to speak, in that situation, because not everyone would be able to. Like you said, the other option is shut up, you don't ask a question. Or you could ask a different question, but it'd be completely rubbish. What was able to make you pull the trigger in those scenarios is, it goes back, like you said, to being creative. I think you're, I don't want to say naturally very creative, because you, of course, have worked very hard at it as well.
But I think
but you have a very natural creativity about you.
I'd agree with that. Like, I do think I'm creative. I don't necessarily think my creativity is always good creativity. Sometimes it's harmful creativity. But
in what way?
Like the smoking. Like, do you know what I mean? but it's like it's creative patterns of thought that I definitely do. I've just seen it throughout my life, so I do agree with you there. And then like I think it's just a byproduct how I include it into my work. It's just like it's an accident. It's just because that's the kind of guy that I am. And then people look at it and then they'll add their own assertions and connotations to it and build like a grandiose like meaning and like, oh, James is like this because it does this. And in my head I'm just like, nah, just like it's for me it's just how do I get from A to B, then from B to C? Like do you know what I mean? It's just step by step, like simple thoughts, and that's it. Like the fact I was asking different questions just because I couldn't ask how's your fight. I would have asked it because like back then I wanted a nice, easy question. Like what they're asking.
And those questions are asked. Obviously, they do get a bit monotonous, but you obviously want to know how's your training.
Of course, I do want to know those things. Anyway.
What do you think of the fight? Those questions that become monotonous are questions that need to be asked.
Yeah.
And if no one asked them, well, people wouldn't have, a lot of
100%.
answers, a lot of the answers that they want the most.
The problem with fighters is they have to answer that to everyone that they ask, but everybody that they ask needs to say it. They kind of need to say it for their company, for their media.
Yeah, so they can put it on their reel.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. So that's all that is. But yeah, no, it's been definitely interesting moments at times with all the questions, that's for sure.
Let's talk about the big question then.
Yeah, go on.
And this was at Fight Island.
Yeah.
Trying to remember the exact date. I think it was January 2021.
Yeah, it might have been.
Conor, Poirier, 2. The question that I'd say broke the internet. Maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but it did. It did.
It did well.
It went absolutely viral, and the amount of times that's played over and over. It was played on his McGregor Forever documentary. The question that you asked him, and I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't have it written down. You read a tweet to Conor.
Well, it wasn't a tweet, actually, no. But carry on. I read it was a quote, or say a quote.
Okay,
we'll just call it a quote.
But did he originally tweet it?
No.
Oh, did he not?
No.
I thought he tweeted it.
No.
Okay.
No, it's fine. I'll explain where.
Yeah.
No, it's just a quote.
I'll paraphrase the quote and then you take it away from there. You read his quote to him. He said something along the lines of, "I've lost my mind to this game like Vincent Van Gogh. I'm obsessed. I'm kind of going crazy in doing it. But when my whole family's set up, when my kids' don't have to worry about money, don't have to worry about where they're going to live, what car they're going to drive, all of that, then it'll be worth it."
Yeah. And then I'll be happy I lost my mind.
That's the end of it.
Yeah.
Talk us through that. How you thought, how you came across that question, how you thought to ask it, what the response was like in terms of from him and then from the MMA sphere, because it went viral, it blew up.
Yeah, it did. It went way more viral than I expected it to go. That's for sure. And again, I could sit here and be like, yeah, man, it was like the most well thought out thing. It took ages researching it, blah blah blah. But I didn't. I actually did it all in about 20 minutes. I was at Fight Island and everybody was having a few drinks at the bar. And I knew that tomorrow was press conference with McGregor, and it was kind of like my first encounter with McGregor, because it wasn't, and it was like, if you want to go on the McGregor stuff pretty quickly, I'll entwine it all.
No, please do.
He got me into the sport. There's no two ways about it, and I was infatuated by the guy, like to a point where it was cringe. Like before I was like working in the space, I was and
I think I got into the UFC much earlier and he was coming up, man. Yeah, like I wanted to be Conor McGregor. Everyone wanted to be Conor McGregor. In 2015, everyone wanted to be Conor McGregor.
Yeah, okay, good. I'm glad to say that.
I wanted to dress like him, sound like I wanted an Irish accent. Yeah. I wanted the tattoo, the gorilla tattoo on my chest. Everything.
There was just something about him, and I was just infatuated by him. The way he speaks, mainly the way he speaks, and the way he thought back then, I was just like, this is so cool. And you know, like, I went to UFC 204 completely on my own. It started in Manchester. First fight was 1 a.m. Finished at 6 a.m. Then I drove home. And McGregor, then I remember I was like, oh man, I'm never going to see McGregor fight or anything, but I would like to see him one day, just like to see him with my eyes. So I bought this talk that he did with Ariel Helwani in Manchester.
I remember that.
Do you? Yeah. I went on my own to that and just sat in the audience and watched it, and I was buzzed, and I was like, wow, there he is, there's McGregor, and there's Ariel. Like, wow, this is crazy. This is like such a unique MMA experience that nobody in my friend circle understood apart from me.
And he'd become champ by that point, hadn't he? I think that was between the Eddie fight and the Mayweather fight.
Was it?
I think. I could be wrong.
I would like to think it wasn't, to be honest. I could be wrong, but I don't think he fought. Do you know what? I actually don't know. It'd be worth actually checking to see.
Just because I remember a line of Ariel was asking him about Dee being pregnant, I think with Conor Jr., and he was like,
it was around that time.
Start all the personal questions, you're going to get me in trouble. I just remember that.
You're right.
Online.
Yeah.
And I remember Junior was born just before the Mayweather fight, because I remember them walking out.
I think you might be right then.
The stroller. A weird random memory.
No, I think you're right.
Associated with, but yeah.
I thought maybe I'd been in it a bit longer than that, but I think you're right. So yeah, I did all. I went to that, saw all of that. I forgot the initial point then, what we were talking about.
We were just talking about the McGregor question, and then you were kind of tying it into, obviously he's who got you into the sport. You wanted to kind of like see him with your own eyes, hear him talk in person. That was when you first got that opportunity.
Yes.
But you were just a fan in the audience, not just a fan in the audience, but you know what I mean. You weren't there on the job.
Yeah. And so because of my McGregor infatuation, I knew so much about him at an early age. Like, I don't know if you ever saw this, but so now I'm going to bring it back down to the initial question. So I was in Fight Island and everyone was drinking at the bar, and I knew McGregor press conference was the next day. So I was thinking to myself, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go watch that old documentary on him from RT Sports, because I used to love that. No, I've never seen clips of it online on social media or anything like that. I still really haven't to this day. And it's a really cool, unique look into McGregor's early life in the UFC. And I just put on episode 2, and within 5 minutes he'd said that quote, and I was just like, when I listened to it and where he was in his stage of his career, I was like, shit, maybe I could ask him that. And so I wrote it down, and I was like, yeah, I'm just going to do that. Just ask that. Just entwine it. So the first question I asked him was, because I knew I was going to lead my second question on to Vincent Van Gogh, and you know, I said to him something about like, what type of painting do you want to paint on Friday night?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yes, some metaphorical or arty question. They didn't get the greatest response, but then it set me up to open the Vincent Van Gogh thing, and then I asked him that, and in the moment I didn't even know. I because I was looking at my phone reading it, I was just like, oh, I need to get all of this quote right, so I'm gonna have to read it. So I was just bear with me for a moment, and I read it, and then I just said, so how does that make you feel hearing that in 2000 and whatever it was? And sat down, and then everything was like a blur after that. I don't even remember what he said back to me. I just remember like,
well, he was sitting there in tears, basically.
Yeah, a few people said that, but I mean, even when I watch it back, I wouldn't say he was in tears.
Not in tears. That's not the right
he
thing
definitely
to say.
felt it.
Yeah.
But I didn't see that because I was reading the thing. So I was just like, oh, just ask the question. I think that went all right. And then like the internet, what told me that it was a good question. Like the next day I was like tagged in all sorts of different posts, people remaking the question with music behind and doing all these like other things, and loads of people messaging me. Like that's when I realized, oh, okay, well, that question must have been pretty good. But yeah, no, I mean, I don't want to sit here and like fake it and just make it sound like, oh yeah, it was really well thought out. And
I think it was though. Like me telling that story, the fact that you thought to go back to watch that.
There's no denying about it that
so few other people have watched.
Yeah, I mean, there's no denying that it was obviously a good question, but like at the same time, like to me, like if it had slid under the radar and never been reposted about it again, I would have been like,
you wouldn't have thought twice about like, this was supposed to be some massive moment. Why didn't it blow up?
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought twice about it. I expected it just to get lost in the archives of McGregor questions. Like genuinely did. And then to see it blow up, I was just like, whoa. And then McGregor started following me. And then that...
What was that moment like?
Well, I didn't actually... The weirdest thing about it was I didn't even see the notification come through. My mate told me, McGregor follows you. And I was like, what? No, he don't. I would have seen that. And then I went onto his Instagram and checked it. And I was like, man, what the fuck? But do you know what? I actually think that came at a detriment and a positive. It was a detriment because I was conscious that he was following me. So I was like conscious of what I posted. I didn't want to upset McGregor. I don't want to lose my McGregor follower. Do you know what I mean?
You almost kind of had him on your shoulder a little bit.
Yeah. And at the same time, it kept me hungry to keep posting and to prove not to him, but like to myself as well that I'm staying in this space. I'm not just a one-hit wonder and now you'll never see me again. Like I'm staying here. And so it came at a detriment, but I also wanted to prove to him for some reason, I have no idea why, because he was following me, that I was an active person in this sport. And I was like, do you know what I mean? I don't really understand the psyche behind it.
Why wouldn't you want to impress Conor McGregor? Like you said,
it's a bit lame, but like at the end of the day, like that, I'm just being completely honest.
We all have idols.
Yeah.
And do you think that's fair to say? Like
McGregor was an idol. Yeah, definitely. I don't think he is anymore.
Yeah.
I think who he was, I still latch on to like that person as being like, I don't know what the word is, but yeah, let's call it an idol for argument's sake. Like in that era for sure, but a lifelong idol, I don't think he's a lifelong idol.
Yeah. Maybe like a hero would be a better.
Yeah, maybe
word.
I think so. Yeah, but I owe a lot to Conor with that, and I find that weird to say because we don't really even know each other, and I also find that weird that somebody can have such a big impact on someone's life, but they don't even know their name.
Yeah,
and I find like Conor's must have changed millions of people's lives without him knowing. Without him even knowing who those lives were. Like that in itself is
it's a strange phenomenon, isn't it?
Yeah, like so when you've got 1,000 people's lives who you've changed without even knowing, and then you've got the lives who you've changed that you do know, and then one guy's life, mine, feels like you need to know about my life and what you've done for it, but there's like he doesn't care. There's 1,000 others that he's done that too. He's like numb to that probably. Do you know what I mean?
That's it. It kind of goes back to an underlying theme that we've been discussing, I suppose, which is that no matter how spectacular, how grandiose something is, if you do it enough times, it's hard to keep not just a novelty. I think novelty is the appropriate word a lot of times, but yeah, that it's hard to keep that awe and keep that perspective of how special it is. Because, like you said, like. Him changing someone's life, him saving someone's life, he must have done that to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. That is an incredible thing. That's an incredibly impactful thing. And that will never change. But if you do that enough times, unfortunately...
Your brain can't understand it.
Yeah.
To the level it needs to. Yeah.
You do things enough times, no matter how extraordinary they are, it becomes ordinary.
Yeah.
And that's... I don't know how to describe it. That's... it's a sad thing.
Yeah. No, it's true though. It's true. It's just one of the things that comes with success, isn't it? Like, eventually it's going to feel normal. But that's why it's important to do lots of gratitude, like thinking. You know, like, I don't think things can ever get normal if you truly take a few minutes out of your day every day to remind yourself that this ain't normal. You are living your dream life. Look where you are. Look what you're doing. Be happy. Like, without talking to yourself like that every day a little bit, people will be like, oh mate, you travel so much, don't you get bored of fucking planes and this and that? And like, yeah, I do, but like, nowhere else I'd still rather be, even though like
it's a privilege.
Yeah, it's a privilege, and you have to remind yourself, because like, you know, I see a lot of people, and when I hear them as well, like peers and stuff, you know, like, you'd hear them in the background. Like, I remember being at media days and oh, fucking can't be asked to be here, man. Like, can you? Like, yeah. Mate, I live and breathe this shit. Like, this is the only place I want to be. And that annoys me sometimes, because I'm just like, oh, you shouldn't have this job. Like, you know, I don't think you deserve to have this job. There's people out there in the world
that would kill for it.
Yeah, they'd kill for it, and they'll do a better job than you without the degree you've got, because they care more than you. And that's so important to me as well. And you know, like, you see people these days going to university, side to side, fucking tangent again, but similar point. You see these people going to uni, and you know, they're just ticking their boxes, but like, the person that is going to be better than the person with the degree is the guy that's got all the hunger and drive in the world. You know, like Elon Musk said it like best. Like, he doesn't look at CVs at Tesla and SpaceX. He wants to see you. He wants to meet you. He wants to see how hungry you are. How much drive do you have? How moldable are you? How much do you care? How much do you want it? They're more valuable than someone that's had 10 years doing a PhD or some shit, that thinks they know it all and blah, blah, blah. And I take that same approach, I think, with what I do. Just keep trying to learn and not be a know-it-all. Do you know what I mean? And there's been, like, just be honest as well. I think that's another thing I've learned. Like, don't make something out that it's not, even if people think it is. Just like the McGregor question, I suppose. You know what I mean? Like, people, I've had so many fucking messages in my inbox about, how did you come up with that question? Like, that's the best question ever, like, blah, blah. And sometimes I'm reading it thinking, man, you guys are overdoing this. Like, it's literally just like the simplest question I thought of on bed in my underwear watching a McGregor documentary. And it's sometimes things are a lot simpler than people want them to be. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that is definitely one of the things that I think people think was a complex thing to come up with. It really wasn't.
Yeah. Matthew McConaughey has a quote that I really like. He says, less impressed, more involved.
Yeah, I like that.
Because he says, the more impressed you are by something, the more in awe you are of something. And again, it's kind of a, what's the word I'm looking for? The words escaped me. We've just talked about how it is important to be in awe of things, because you don't want to lose the gratitude for how special it is. But at the same time, if you're in awe of something so much, you're so impressed by something, then you're not actually in the moment. You're not.
I agree.
You know, you're not actually contributing. You're not actually engaging.
I think that's where I was for the first few events that I was doing, because I was so in awe of it. I'd do what was needed, what I was told to do, but like, there was so much more I could have done but I was just too in awe of the moment. I think that's just a natural thing though for anybody that loves what they do and has been given an opportunity to do what they absolutely love. For the first few months, you're just going to be in awe. Yeah. Like, you really are. And it's going to take a couple of years for you to even get to the person you thought you were on day one of coming into that job, just because of that, what you've just said.
Yeah. And that's what I mean, is that, you know, these guys, they're asking you, how do you come up with that question? How do you come up with that question? They're so impressed by it be more involved. Just start asking your own questions.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, keep practicing your craft, and it will come.
Yeah.
Because you can't manufacture a moment like that when it requires someone else's response. When McGregor had to tango with that in order for it, in order for your question to have an answer.
Yeah.
If he'd just sat there, it doesn't matter how good the question is. If he'd just sat there and gone, yeah, that was good to hear that, or
this
or
is it.
next question.
I feel like
then it wouldn't have blown up. It requires things like that where it requires it requires a dance between two people.
Old McGregor wouldn't have accepted that question well.
Do you not think?
No. I think like it was lucky I even asked it in the era of McGregor that I asked it.
And that's what I mean. It's not even just a case of old McGregor, new McGregor. It was that moment in time. I think that moment, the Cerrone fight and the second Poirier fight, he seemed to be in his healthiest space in life.
Yeah.
Because if you'd asked it to the old McGregor, he was still, he was so hungry and he was so kind of in the moment that he wouldn't be reflecting on that. Yeah, and then if you asked it him now, we'll get onto that. But I don't think you'd get a very open, honest.
No, you wouldn't have.
Thoughtful
he didn't
response.
even like talking about the idea Dee was pregnant back then. Do you know what I mean? Because it would distract him from where he thought his mindset needed to be. So for me to ask a question like that to him back then, it probably would have been met like, mate, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah,
and then I would have been, and then I would have been
a line like
the
that.
Joke.
Yeah. It could have been completely different. You might have still blown up with it,
but
for
not in a good way.
Reason.
Yeah, you're that idiot that asked that question.
You're that idiot that McGregor told he was going to chip backstage.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, honestly, it feels just like it was just all luck, but it was something I felt as well. You know what I mean? Like, but I felt it because I was involved. Do you know what I mean? Like you were saying, like I felt that this, like I didn't really think about it. I didn't think, but old McGregor might not like it. My brain had already done the calculations, I think, for me without telling me. My subconscious brain, this will work. Done.
Yeah. In that circumstance, you were less impressed or involved.
Yeah.
And look what it led to.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's it.
So yeah, you say you'd met him before in person, though, before that, and obviously you've interviewed him, asked him questions, been around him. I imagine quite a few times after you've asked that question. We've alluded to this already, but I wanted to ask you how, if at all, you've seen McGregor. How would I phrase this? How have I got it written down? Yeah. Have you noticed a change over the years? I think the answer to that we've already said is yes. But yeah, talk to me about that.
Okay. So yeah, I would say I've noticed a change.
Because it's different. Because obviously everyone listening to this knows what I'm alluding to. When you see the kind of stuff he's putting out on social media, what you see in the news, it seems very clear there's been a big deterioration in terms of, his health mentally, physically it's another thing, but mentally, and I'd say spiritually, it seems like he's not in a good place. Whereas before in that second Poirier fight, he seemed in a much healthier space, and then he lost to Poirier and it just went away and it's gone downhill since. Is that the same thing in real life is what I'm asking?
Yeah, I think the key word, what you said there, is seems. And that's all I can do as well, is tell you what I seem to see.
Because as much as you've seen him in real life as opposed to through a phone screen, he's still, it's not like you've gone into his house in the middle of the night or seen him actually behind closed doors. Yeah. He's still got his, whatever facade he has up, he's still got that up.
Yeah, he does. I think I always remember, and I think it's from the same video, and I wanted to find this clip. He's in a hotel room with Dee, and they're like dancing to this song, and he says, I wonder if money's going to change me. I don't think it will, but it's going to be interesting to see. And I remember that, like, for some reason, I vividly remember that clip a lot, and I think about trying to find it a lot, and I would like to find it just to watch that moment back, because that's Conor McGregor just about to go boom and then boom.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what led to his downfall? Was it him losing his fights, or was it something at home that led to him losing his fights? I don't know that answer.
That's really interesting. That's important to bring up actually, because I didn't even consider that. Everyone just thinks it's what we see in the public sphere. It could be something in his private life no one knows anything about.
Yeah, totally. And when you're dealing with what it must be like to be Conor McGregor after a couple of years of that, it must be pretty mental. And it's like when people talk about it, I don't blame McGregor for any of the things that he's done really, because it kind of seems counterintuitive to, not counterintuitive, sorry, that's the opposite. It kind of seems like what his life has given him would equate to this kind of a person. So
1 + 1 = 2.
Yeah, so
seems about right.
I'm kind of not surprised, because if you're told you're God, you're the funniest guy ever, you're the best looking guy in GQ, and you're the hardest guy in the world, and the whole world is like following you for the first time in any like MMA person's life, you've just taken it to the next level. Now you're like the face of the UFC, like Dana's licking your ass, you've got fighters wanting pictures with you on the same roster in the same division. It will change, and depending on your personality, it will either change you into a madman or it will change you in some way. And I feel like Conor realized that the guy and who he was being in his press conference was the guy to be, like 24/7. He was, obviously when you look at McGregor, like I think he was this guy 24/7, but I think as his relationship with the UFC developed, I feel like he became a parody of himself.
I'm so glad you said that, because if you didn't, I was going to quote it back to you, because I remember you saying that to me a few months ago.
Yeah, and I feel like that guy at the press conference, he then had to become all the time. And I think he just fell into that, like by accident, and then you just start acting up, and I feel like you just think you're untouchable, and that leads to you being more deluded than you were in the first place. And like we said, delusion is healthy in mixed martial arts, but when that cage door closes and then reopens again for you to walk out, it's not as, you don't need that anymore in the real world, and the real people of the real world can spot that a mile away. Do you know what I mean? They really can. And I remember McGregor, it was after the Nate Diaz loss, the very first Nate Diaz loss, people and casuals, that's when McGregor started like going downhill. Like they were just like, yo, he ain't what he says he is he? Oh, he's fucking lost to Nate Diaz. Oh, what the fuck? And then he wins, then he does the Alvarez, and he goes back down. And I don't know, I feel like it's very hard for me to sit here and say, yeah, he's changed, and like, I think he's a dickhead now, and blah, 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 blah. Because I don't really know him as a person to say to hundreds of people on a podcast, like, yeah, he's a dick and blah, 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 blah. Because I actually don't think deep down he is a dick. I think the way that his life has played out, the options that he's been given in his life have kind of, they make anybody a bit of a dick. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you see these kind of kids growing up that have been given everything in their life before they're fucking 14 and they're dickheads. Do you know what I mean? Like if you're going to get given everything from when you're 28 to 42, like everything, you'll probably be a dickhead when you're 42 as well. Do you know what I mean? Depends on you as a person and your moral compass as well. But if you're like a street fighter, MMA guy that has grown up on the streets, having laughs and shagging birds, and it's probably not going to be a healthy outcome for anyone. And there's some parts of me that understands a little bit when I see that, of why the UFC do cap fighters with their money, because they lose as soon as they start paying them loads. They start fucking losing them mentally and physically. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think like if McGregor had never been paid what he had been paid for his Aldo fight, his Floyd fight, his Diaz's fights, and he was in a position where he had to keep fighting to maintain a lot of money. You know, still wealthier than 98% of the world. I think he would still be that guy. But I think it's just money that has changed him. It's got to be. I can't think why else. I mean, you just look at it all, and it's all just a level up. Now he's going head to head with Money Mayweather, who's like this flamboyant money guy, and that's what McGregor's identity is in the UFC. But now he's battling that against a boxer who really is the biggest in the world of having the flash and the money and the cars. And then he's finished that fight, and then he's got even more of that juice, and it's just, I don't really know if what I'm saying makes a lot of sense. It's quite fucking all over the place, but like I don't really know how to answer it like straightforwardly without just saying he's now a dick. But I don't think that's the right thing to say.
Yeah. Does it feel unnerving? Has it felt unnerving to be around him at all recently? Because he seems like a very volatile person to be around at these events now.
Yeah.
It seems like he could just go off on anyone at any point.
Yeah, I do feel a little bit of that, but I think that's just what I've built up in my head of how I see McGregor. But when I saw him in Saudi, he was like, "What's up, James? What's the news, mate?" Or some shit. And I was like, "Cool." And then he started talking to me, and then I felt like he was just a bit like glazed. Like I felt like a bit robotic. I felt like he was just a little bit inside himself, but talking to me.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Not really
like,
there.
Wouldn't look me in the eyes that much. He was just a bit like, I don't know, maybe it was the body language of somebody that didn't want to be spoken to, and I'm overreading what it is, because you know there's times I come in the gym and people start chatting to me, and and I feel like I'm giving off shit vibes, but it's not because I think I'm amazing or whatever. Or do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
so I have to
you can only read what's on the surface, but you don't know what's.
But and then relate.
You don't know what's projecting that onto the surface.
But I can only read something based on understanding how I feel. If I don't understand how I feel, I can't read what somebody else is doing. But I know that people aren't the same. So this is just what I think if I was McGregor type thing. But I don't really know. I mean, it's obvious it's changed, hasn't it? And for exactly what reason, I don't really know, other than money and fame. And they're very easy answers to give.
Yeah, but I do think maybe it is as simple as that. Like I said, I think it's a combination of factors: money, fame, prestige, all of this.
But there's a lot of times as well where you can't be asked to talk, and so I feel it in a very small way, and I always walk away from the moment feeling guilty or like, you're a dickhead, James, what the fuck. But like, you know, like when I get back from trips and like everyone in the gym's like, "Oh yeah, how was your trip, mate? Well, yeah, sick. What?" Like, I actually find it uncomfortable. I don't know what the fuck I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Like
sometimes you don't want to say anything.
Yeah. So
sometimes I don't really even know myself how the trip was.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I don't know what to tell you.
I understand that they're asking from a really nice perspective, and they just want to know, like, "Oh, was it cool? What did you do? Who did you see?" But like, this is something that I've got to get better at with myself. But I feel like I don't want to be like, I don't know how you answer these questions without sounding like some kind of, everybody's take a seat next to me.
No one's going to think no.
I know, but that's how it feels sometimes. Yeah. And I'm just like, I'd rather not like, so now when people say like, "Oh yeah, do you have a good trip?" I'm just like, "Yeah, it's great, man."
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And then I feel sometimes they're like, "Oh, is that what he's going to say?" And then they're like, "Yeah, cool." And then there's like a couple of, "Yeah, it's cool, man, cool." And then I'll walk away from that just thinking, "Oh, mate, I bet you came across like a right dickhead then." Like, no, genuinely though, like that's how, like even though I know I'm doing it in the moment, like I can't stop it because it's like an awkwardness. It's like I've got to tell loads of people about how wicked my life is, and
yeah, yeah.
do you know what I mean? And sometimes I feel awkward about doing that because I don't know. I do this for myself and for my own happiness, not for like
the clout.
Yeah, or not for the people to come over and like kiss my ass or whatever. Not that happens, but like I definitely feel at times people like want to know like how I wanted to know what it was like asking Dan when I first came up. So what's it like at UFC? And then like, oh cool, who did you see? Like how did you see that? Or like blah blah blah. But every time if I come into the gym and I've got to talk like that, I feel like I don't know. I think it's an insecurity of sounding successful when I don't think I am.
Maybe a bit of imposter syndrome.
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
That's not the right,
No. I definitely
right
had imposter syndrome. I don't have it anymore. I genuinely believe that I should be at these events now.
Yeah, I'm glad you do.
Yeah. But previously I didn't. But there's just something about some like going into HW1 after 3 weeks away, and everybody coming up to you and like, oh, how's your trip? How's it? I don't know. I'm physically even thinking about it now. I don't understand it, and I don't understand why I don't want to be like, man, it was sick. It was so cool. I bumped into Nate Diaz and I did this and I did that. Part of me feels like I sound like I'm bragging a bit, almost in the way I have to kind of explain it for people to feel the emotions I felt in there and do the story justice if I'm going to explain it. So yeah, now I'm just like, yeah, it was good, man. Like almost as if I don't want it. Why are you talking to me? Fuck off. That's the kind of energy I get scared I'm giving people now. And maybe Conor's reached some new level of that where like he just don't give a fuck and he doesn't really want to talk to you and he doesn't care anymore. Like he's happy with what he's got and he just doesn't care. And I think like when you become successful and content with who you are and yourself, that's when you stop caring as well. But then the care spreads out in ways that you didn't think it would, and then you have to check yourself like, oh, why am I being rude there, or what's going on here? Do you know what I mean? It's quite complex thing to try and describe, but ultimately, yeah, I do struggle with that. And even with my parents and my family members, there's some people that never cared about me before, and then all of a sudden like they're like, oh, so when's your next trip? Like as if my identity is based now on traveling, and then that makes me anxious. Like
people care about what you do as opposed to who you are.
Yeah, like, and then I'm like, well, I haven't got anything lined up actually at the moment. So and then I just like have these weird like mental battles with myself where I'm just like, somebody, the worst one is when I'm chatting to a family member, I'm going away for a fight. Like, oh yeah, who's fighting? And I'm like, well, I don't think you know a single fighter, so I don't even know how to start this conversation without it being long, boring, and you listening to stuff you don't care about. And then I'm like, and I'm just like, how do I start this convo? And it's like, it's a really bad flaw of mine that I've noticed in the past couple of years, and I've never really noticed a communication flaw so apparent other than this. And like my mum would say, back in the day when she's like, oh, who are you going away with? Is it the reptiles? And I was like, it's fucking full reptile. You know who it is. Like the tiniest weird things would annoy me about the job. Like when I'd come back home and like them being happy for me, but just not really understanding what I'm doing was a bit like, this is annoying because I want you to fucking understand, but I don't even think you care. You're just happy to see You probably do, but you're more happy just to see that.
They don't care about it itself. What they care about is like what
my son
effect it's having on you.
Yeah, totally.
How it makes you happy.
100%.
Yeah.
But then when they pretend to care about the thing and then they get it all wrong and they say stupid words, that fucking drives me mad. And it's so stupid, bro. It's so stupid. But yeah, I struggle with that. Like, I really struggle with coming back from trips and talking highly about them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't like it. I just, like, it feels like I'm talking like, oh, I'm some super famous guy, like that comes to the gym and everyone's like, yeah, can I get a picture?
You don't. Maybe it's
not
like
that.
maybe it's you don't like feeling as though you're in some way separate from everyone else. Like,
yeah, I think so. Yeah, maybe it is.
Like
yeah,
a conformity kind
it could
of
be.
thing. I mean,
No, but it could be.
Psychologist that.
No, it could be.
Because I feel that
definitely
sometimes
feel
myself.
uncomfortable.
I definitely like to try and conform with people.
Yeah.
I don't like feeling as though I'm different. I know that's a flaw.
No, totally, man. It just feels like, I don't know. I'm grateful that everybody loves what I'm doing and like don't want any of those feelings to stop for those people, obviously. But at the same time, like, I really struggle with talking about what I do in a informal situation to other people in the gym. I don't know why that is. It's like, it's so strange, but I just feel really uncomfortable, just as if like, yeah, I don't know. It's really strange. It's very strange, but it's one of those, you know, when you've like had a chat with someone and you've given it like 5% energy and you walk away and you're just like, yeah, I think you could have been a bit nicer there, or given a little bit more to that person, rather than like shutting it down and just switching the question back to you. Like, yeah, good. How was your day?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
But
like,
if you,
weird, fam.
if you give everyone 100%, you've got then nothing left inside for you.
Yeah.
It's that classic. You've got to be selfish.
Yeah.
You've got to be selfish. You've got to have a balance of selflessness and selfishness, because if all you do is give out, and don't take anything in and don't keep anything in, then you're going to be empty.
Yeah.
So
I think like when I was growing up as well, I was very much that guy that wanted to be loved. Like, I'd do things to be loved. Like, and now I'm not that guy, and I'd want to like, yeah, let's talk about this that I did, and like, yeah, me. But I think that comes from an insecurity of not actually having anything and wanting to have something. But now I've got something I want to work towards on being the best at. Now all of a sudden I don't feel I've got anything to show anybody, because I'm doing this for myself, not for you guys. So when people are like asking me loads of questions about the trip and what was it like and who did you see, and I'm just like kind of shut down a little bit. I'm just like, I don't want to talk about what I've been doing. I'd rather hear about your day. Do you know what I mean? Like, what have you been doing? Like, I don't want to sit here and just tell you like, oh yeah, it was good, mate. Like, the flights were sick. Saw this. Like, it's the same. Every trip I have the same response for you. Otherwise, do you know what I mean?
Well, you got a good answer now, because someone asks you, oh, what do you do? Or, you know, how's your job, etc. You can tell them, go watch this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. I can do
that. So we talked a lot about Conor. Switch over to, I suppose it is the other side of the tracks. His nemesis, Khabib. I'm very intrigued to know what your interactions with Khabib have been like. What's Khabib like in person?
Yeah, like a real person. Like, I don't want to throw shit on Conor. Like, Conor got me into this sport. As I said, I'm a Conor fan till the day I die, right? But that doesn't mean that because I'm a Conor fan, I have to agree with everything he does and like, he's a faultless human. Like, no. He's got lots of faults. He's not perfect. There's things I don't like about him. But I'm not going to suck his dick anymore just to make sure he likes me, basically.
Quick question. Does he still follow you?
I think so,
yeah.
Yeah. Maybe not after this podcast.
Just says, what the fuck is James all about? I've seen this podcast.
But look, it is what it is, man. And if he unfollows me, I'm not really bothered, to be honest.
That's a healthy place to be.
Yeah, no, it is. It definitely is.
And a very difficult place.
The biggest guy in martial arts follows you. That's cool, but also it comes with a bit of baggage, because if you want that to keep hold of that follow, then you can't be posting much Khabib stuff. You can't be. Do you know what I mean? Otherwise, we just unfollow you.
Yeah.
But like that was what my mentality was like for the first year of his follow. I was like, fuck, if he doesn't like me. So pathetic, man. And now I'm just like,
99% of people in your position would still be doing that now.
Yeah, they would, but I don't think they'd.
And they've come on this podcast and, oh, no, Conor's still a great guy. You meet him in person, he's still a great guy. You know what I mean? They wouldn't actually give an honest answer to the questions that I've just asked you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, totally. Well, Khabib's fucking night and day difference. Like, night and day. Very personable. Like, my first ever interaction with Khabib was pretty cool. So there was a UFC security, and his name was shout out man like Slav. Absolute bad man this guy was, man. He would make sure that I got whatever I wanted, wherever I wanted. He'd basically have to look after one of the fighters throughout the whole week. So he'd be like, he'd look after one of the main event, and he'd be with their squad at all times, making sure they got what they want, and all that type of stuff. And I was always really good mates with Slav, and I was like, yo, Slav, what are you up to? And he was just like, just coming down for dinner with Khabib. You want to come? And I was like, am I allowed? And he was just like, brother, you with me? Anything can happen. And I was just like, sweet. So I come down, and I see him, Khabib, and a few of the boys sat at a table, and he's like, James, come. And he pulls me a chair, and I sit down. And I was only really talking to Slav to start with. I didn't want to seem like, oh my God, everyone, hi. I was just like, hey, what's up, boys? And just had a chat with Slav. And then when we finished dinner, we were walking back up to the hotel, and then Khabib says to me, who are you? And then I was just like, I was thinking, well, how do I was like, took a while to answer because I didn't know in what context he meant. I was like, does he want to know my name? Does he want to know my job role? What does he want to know? Who am I? And then Slav kind of jumped in, and he was just like, this is the best media guy in the world. Obviously, I'm not, but this is what he was saying. Hey. No, but you got my vote. I've said, I know, but I keep saying these type of phrases. I just don't want anyone to think I.
Nobody thinks that. But on record, he's got my vote.
And so I was like, yeah. And he was like, oh, you media? And I was thinking in my head, like, shit, I don't know if I want to be media right now, because I'm just going to seem like I'm hungry for.
I just want to be me.
Yeah. So I was just like, yeah, a little bit. And then we got in the elevator, and he was like talking to me about my clothes or something, not in a bad way, which made us a change.
He was talking about your clothes?
Yeah, I can't remember. He asked me something about my jumper or t-shirt, and then we get into his room. Yeah, so that's right. So we get out of the elevator, and then I explained to him I work with Dan Hardy, and he was just like, oh, I love Dan. He's awesome. And then we pulled me into his room, and Slav was like, do you want these trousers? They're like some Burka boxing trousers, BUKA, like the Russian sports brand. And he was like, these are Khabib's. And I was just like, no way. And he's like, yeah, these are mine, but I give them to Slav, but he's big guy now, brother, so he can't fit. So he gave them to me. So I used to wear these like trousers all the time till they fell apart. And then he went into his other room, and he brought out loads of Khabib Fitroo protein bars, like gave me about 50. And he was like, make sure you give some of these to Dan. And it was just like a guy that didn't know he was an MMA fighter. There's a few guys you meet and you can bring them into a conversation. You can put them at your dinner table with your mum and dad, and they'd be like, oh, what do you do? Like, they wouldn't be able to figure out you in an MMA fighter. Do you know what I mean? And I think Khabib's one of those people. Tom Aspinall's definitely one of those people. You take Tom out of the cage at any other moment, and he's not a fighter. Like, he is, obviously, he's like the best in the world, but he's not, his personality doesn't scream, I'm a fighter, I don't go into cages and punch people. His fucking personality screams out like, I'm a nurse or something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's not a fighter. And I find that juxtaposition like more interesting than the brashy, I know I'm a fighter character like the McGregor. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
they're just everyday people.
Yeah.
Who happen to be incredible at what they do.
Yeah.
And what they do is fight.
But what's fascinating to me is I know they have the access to pick the McGregor option and be rewarded from it as well.
Because we talked about money being a factor for McGregor changing, and fame, status, all of those things. Well, Khabib's got lots of money. He's got lots of fame now. He's got lots of status, and he, like you said, he's got the option to go there, and he didn't. He's not even necessarily gone somewhere else. He's just a normal guy still. What do you think stopped him?
Religion, Khabib, religion, obviously.
Yeah.
Religion and upbringing.
What about for Tom?
For Tom, I think, I don't know what it is for Tom. I don't know if kind of Darren Till took that role out of the gym or something, and Tom saw that role of the cocky, brashy guy, maybe enjoyed it, but realised this dangerous place to be mentally is that kind of place, and it's probably better to
he saw the cautionary tale.
Yeah, definitely. Like, and I don't know what it is about Tom, but he's just the most down to earth, real human, and like the occasion never gets the better of his ego ever, and that blows my mind. Like when he won the belt, and I was in New York with him, and
tell us all about that, because I wanted to ask you about that. So because obviously Tom, he's a friend of yours now at this point, isn't he? He is. He's not just someone who's an acquaintance who you cover.
No, he's
Tom's
a good friend. Yeah.
So what was that moment like?
It was amazing for me as well, because I've been there with Tom throughout his whole UFC career and his last Cage Warriors fight, last 2 Cage Warriors fights. So like I've been following Tom at his hip for a while. And I remember when he got signed to the UFC, I remember doing his first ever interview at the UFC. We did a first ever podcast he went on. I did a lot with him, right? When he injured his leg, I was there by his bed throughout the surgery, throughout all the meetings, throughout everything. And I know what he's gone through to get to where he is mentally, and like sharing texts to me, like when he was like in his recovery, and he's just like telling me how hard and difficult it is, and like you can sense that he doesn't see any light in the tunnel, and then for him to like steamroll out that tunnel into the sun, like it's like what the fuck. But wow, yes, you definitely deserve that. But there's moments where I'm like, if I was Tom, the testosterone in my body would have gone into my ego as well at some point of that night. Even if it's not for a lifetime, that night, I would have been the boy. And I would have wanted everyone to know. Even if for just one night. Just one night, I'm going to be the boy. And he wasn't. And I was like, wow, this is weird. But in a cool way. It was refreshing. Like he didn't touch his belt once. His mates were just passing it around, and they were walking through the street with it like on their shoulder, and Tom was at the back with his hood up, and all these people are running over to the person with the belt like, oh my God, well done, you did wicked today, you did wicked. And then Tom's at the back like, mate, he's a killer, and like he's taking none of it. Like all of
the strength of character.
I know
the strength of character. I'd be an arsehole.
I would be.
I know I wouldn't want to be, but I know I would be.
No, but I think I would want to be for one night only. Let me be the boy. Let me walk around like Conor McGregor with the fucking UFC belt that I just earned, and I want everyone to come and say, "Oh, wow!" Even if you didn't even see it, you're faking it. Like, I give it me. This is my moment. Walking around New York, getting all the birds. None of it. Just like with his dad, just like, yeah, I think we did quite well, didn't we? Just like that.
How much do you think his dad has a role in Tom's
huge.
character? Yeah,
huge.
Not
intentionally.
Yeah,
like not like this was something that happened when he was a kid. It must be. Like,
yeah. Because I guess this is a really good example of having your father as your coach. It can be bad because you know if your father's not a particularly good father, then having him as a coach is a really bad idea.
Yeah.
But if your father's someone that's raised you well with good morals, good values, and you truly respect your father, and he's got a good head on his shoulders, he's going to guide you well, which Tom's father clearly has.
And Tom's dad
it's going to be a brilliant thing.
Yeah, and he's not motivated like he's not a Michael Jackson dad. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he's like he only cares about Tom and Tom being happy and what Tom wants. It's not like how much money
Tom can make him.
Well, not make him.
Yeah.
How much money can Tom make?
Even how much money Tom can make.
Yeah. He definitely thinks about that, but he doesn't think. Again, he's not selfish. He's very selfless. He's happy with his life. He's happy he can retire. He's happy he's got a gym. Right, and he's happy his family are there and his family are being successful. That's it. Do you know what I mean? And you can see it with Tom as well. And it's just like, it kind of blows me away every time. And I kind of want to say something every time. And then I kind of get trapped in my head thinking about him. And then I'm not listening to him. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, sorry, what were we on about? Just thinking about how nice you're, mate. You know what I mean? Like, it's stupid at times, man. But like, I take a lot out of it.
Less impressed, more involved, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's nice to keep saying that, but it's good to be impressed.
Yeah, it is.
It's good to be impressed by things.
No, it is. It is. It really is. It shows you as well what kind of person you can be.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Where with your family and like there's a lot of things that Tom gets with his dad that I don't get, like that ability to share the mat space together. There's some kind of connection that happens there with a father and son that must be very special, and I envy that a lot. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, I don't know. I think when I don't know any father-son relationship in MMA that is a bad one. I can't think of one. Like, you got Richard Shaw, Jack Shaw, absolutely amazing. Khabib and Abdul Mano, amazing. Tom and Andy, amazing.
Yeah.
Wonder Boy and his dad proved to be amazing.
Yeah, that's right, actually, because I was thinking it can go one or two ways.
Yeah.
But I can't think of a bad example that I know of, that we know of.
I can't.
Maybe they've failed so badly that they never got to the point of anyone recognising it.
Yeah, totally. But, there's definitely something that comes with that. These fighters that do have their dads in their corner, they're all personable. And none of them are dickheads. None of them do anything to make their family embarrassed. They go out there with good good moral compasses on the press conferences and stuff like that, and they come out like gentlemen as well. Do you know what I mean? Every one of them does that. I can't think of an example where some of the nicest fighters in the UFC have their dads in their corner, which is a strange stat, you could call it. There's definitely something to that, I think.
I've got some kind of rapid fire questions for you. Mm-hmm. It's got to be one word answers, so you're not allowed to justify them.
Yeah, okay.
Top 3 MMA greatest of all time.
Anderson Silva.
See number 1 or number 3? So in order as well.
Okay, in order. John Jones, GSP, I don't know whether to put a current person in, or even though they're not, or I don't know. Okay, let me just have one more think. because I get confused between who's the best fighter in the world and who do I like
not
the
best,
most.
okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then
Detaching
the greatest
you,
of all time, like I'm trying to like.
Yeah, because best fighter and greatest of all time are very different as well.
They are. And Khabib.
So Jones first, GSP second, Khabib third.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
5 fighters that you'd invite to your dinner party or invite around your house to have a smoke. You're not allowed to say Tom.
I'm not allowed to invite Tom.
No, and you're not allowed to invite Molly or Paddy.
Okay, all right. Sean Strickland.
Okay.
For a smoke, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever you know, dinner parties like the classic. James Mistry doesn't throw.
Okay, all right.
He'll throw something much cooler.
Sean Strickland, Nate Diaz, Polyana Viana.
I'm gonna be. I'm guessing that's just a very attractive female fighter.
Yes. So who have I got so far? Sean, Nate, Polyana, Masvidal.
Are you going to give Polyana a friend, or is she just going to be hassled by?
Well, that's what I was thinking. I was like, well, these guys have got better chance with
all about
Polyana than I have.
We're living in, you know what I mean, your fantasy world. It's all about you.
Okay.
All
right. And then the last person for the party, I think McGregor.
Yeah. That's either going to be the best night that like anyone's ever experienced. It's gonna be a house on fire.
Even if it
one way or another, it's gonna be a house.
It would be the best night.
Yeah. It's gonna be a house on fire.
Yeah.
One way or another.
So
You got Sean, Nate, Masvidal, McGregor, and Polyana.
Yeah. Sean, Nate, Masvidal, McGregor, Polyana.
That's gonna be a crazy night.
Yeah.
I want to see it now.
Do you know what Polyana looks like?
I don't. No, I will be googling her after this.
Mate, honestly, for you guys.
Did she fight in the UFC?
Yeah.
Okay.
She is a smoke show. Like, I remember seeing her at the UFC.
It's very ignorant of me that I don't know who she is.
No,
what weight does she fight at?
Straw. Let me see. Actually, no, I think she might be bantam. To be honest. So we can put this on the.
I mean,
yeah, she's
attractive.
outrageous.
Yeah.
That doesn't look like a fight, does it?
No.
We'll put a picture of her up on.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I was just thinking like you'll have to. I don't have the video.
I'll do it.
Yeah. We'll make that work so you can see who she is. What's the next? I've lost where I was. Rapid fire questions. What percentage of UFC fighters are on steroids?
2%.
2%.
Yeah.
2% of UFC fighters are on steroids.
Yeah.
The 98% aren't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 2 or 5.
2 or 5.
Yeah, I'll say 5.
Yeah.
But I think people are allowed to like justify this.
I'm going to break my own rule because this is an area of interest.
Yeah. Okay. There's a lot of people, a lot of casuals I've heard that think most of the fighters in the UFC are on something. And I genuinely believe that they're not. And I think, okay, there might be like 2 or 3 fighters in there that are definitely doing something secretly, something that goes under the USADA testing protocol that they can get around somehow. And they've got scientists involved helping them. And that's going to be very expensive.
So you think a lot of them don't have the financial means to be able to circumvent USADA?
Yeah. Okay. You get somebody coming in on 10 and 10 or 12 and 12 or whatever they're coming in on 20 and 20. They're not going to be jeopardizing their UFC career for a little, like, okay, some of them, there's always going to be that one person that will go against every point I've made in this argument, and there will be someone for it.
And people that just roll the dice,
Yeah,
hope
yeah,
they don't get caught,
totally,
and they don't.
Totally. But most of the guys in the UFC now, I genuinely believe that, like, it's not what they're doing. I was chatting to someone, they were like, yeah, man, like, at least like half of the roster are on something.
That's probably me.
Even if it was you,
I think
I've had this conversation with quite a few different people, and I truly believe that they're not. And I mean, to say this as just a cameraman who's like goes here and there, but
you've got a lot more insight than most.
I've spoke to a lot of coaches about this as well, and they're all very quick to shoot it down and be like, mate, it just doesn't exist like it used to anymore. Like, if you really want to do something, then you can, but it's going to be at such a huge risk. You're going to jeopardize your legacy if you're a top fighter anyway, like TJ Dillashaw did. TJ did it, and you know, I don't know how he got caught. I think because they don't test for EPO that regularly in USADA, and I think they just might have done that time or something. But I genuinely believe that most of the guys in the UFC are not on any drugs, and if they do get caught, it is probably a tainted supplement. And like the Usman in Bellator, I would like to think that was genuinely a tainted. Yeah, that was genuinely a tainted supplement. Like, if you're Muslim, that's all haram, or any type of like drug would be haram. I can't imagine somebody with that much dignity to purposefully go and do something like that. Okay, back in the day in wrestling and stuff like that, it was just part and parcel of the game. Especially in Russia, you know, like they got banned from the Olympics and stuff for doping, and obviously they're Russian, so there's good like lines to point, oh, these guys, you know,
guilt by association.
Exactly. But the finances you have to take, the stress levels that you'd have to go to keep it hidden, to what degree is it even worth it anymore? I think back in the day, it probably would have been worth it, but from who I've spoke to, from what I've seen, and you know, nobody's taking juice. I think they're all waiting for their career to end so they can take juice. To be honest, I know Tom Aspinall is.
Yeah,
he'll tell you that too. He's like, as soon as my career's finished, I'm getting wham. Mate, you already
wham. 265 pounds lean.
What are you gonna look like? Mental. But yeah, I think, you know, it's a very, very hard one to talk about with such confidence, as I haven't got the proof.
Yeah.
But I've got the insights and the right people that have definitely educated me in a way to where, yeah, it happens. But to think 6 out of 10 people are doing it in the UFC is a massive stretch. Mm-hmm. I really, really think that. I don't necessarily like in Cage Warriors and places like that. Yeah, they're all on tests and stuff like that. I don't know what it's like in KSW and Octagon, but they're probably on loads of stuff there. But when you're in the UFC, you ain't gonna mess around with stuff like that unless you've been in the game for a while. You understand how the USADA's working with you. You understand what they're testing for. You understand where you're lacking and where you need improvement. And then you'll get the right guys in to bypass certain things that are going to have to be testing you to make sure that it's not coming up on you. It's a big old fucking song and dance to do that these days at the highest level, because everyone's monitoring you. And yes, there's ways around USADA, and there's a way around anything. If you want to take some kind of drug, there will be a way around it. But yeah, I don't know. you can speak to a few different people, like even Chael Sonnen. You know, was super juiced up guy in the UFC and talks openly about it. But he'll tell you in today's day and age, it's more or less impossible to do it unless you financially, like, you've got it all. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then again, who knows? Maybe they are on steroids, as Nate Diaz said.
Back to rapid fire. Who's the most exciting fighter coming up right now? I'll leave it open to your interpretation. They could be amateur, they could be professional, they could be in the UFC, not in the UFC. Who's the most exciting fighter in the world coming up right now?
There's quite a few fighters I'm really excited to see how they develop. When you say excited, I don't really know what that means specifically. Because
I know your interpretation. But like the biggest, but not buzz in turn, but buzz to you.
Yeah, buzz to me. Not like who's going in and fighting.
Yeah, not just Khamzat Chimaev, because everyone wants to see how Khamzat Chimaev or Rakhmonov does, or Bo Nickel. Yeah, but to you, like who gives you the most buzz? I want to see where they're going to end up.
Yeah. I really am excited to watch Patchy Mix. I think Patchy Mix is phenomenal. And he's blown my mind for a while how good he is. And I'm very excited to see where he goes. All his fights are sick. But then at the same time, I like Alexander Shabley. I think he's amazing. I think he can go so far. And then you've got the obvious guys like Shara Bullet. I think he's going to be super exciting. Dagestani, who lives in China, he's got ginger hair, he's got one eye, and he's a striker. That's like somebody like click randomize on Sims.
Someone's gone on UFC 3 and just gone
randomize. Yeah. So I think those guys.
Those three.
Yeah. Oh, and Johnny Eblen. Actually, let me take off. No, I'm not going to take off anyone. Johnny Eblen. There's 3 Bellator fighters in this, to be fair. Johnny Eblen, Patchy Mix, Alexander Shabley, and Shara Bullet. I think I'll be most excited to watch how their 4 careers develop in the next 2 or 3 years than anybody else's. For sure.
Still rapid fire. What's your favourite event ever that you've covered?
Either the Rising event in Japan or the BMF in Madison Square Garden. That was pretty cool. I did enjoy that a lot, yeah. And I'll give you another one as well. I'll give you one for Bellator as well. Bellator France. That was one of the biggest, loudest, most packed out arenas for an MMA event I've ever. Louder than UFC London. It was insane. It was insane.
The UFC events in France have been getting massive buzz as well. Haven't they? Massive applause from the crowd.
Yeah, the French fans are amazing. They're quite intelligent as well. Like, start cheering when there's a guard pass or like stuff like that. It'd be like someone would like get into half guard and everyone's like, "Rah!" This is sick.
That's cool.
Yeah, it is really cool.
What fighter surprised you the most with how they were in person compared to your perception going in?
Oh, that's a good one. Dylan Dennis.
I'm going to break my own rule again.
Yeah.
Just give us a couple of lines on that.
Okay, well, I was in New York and I was doing some stuff with Dylan and I was just like, this guy's going to be a bellend. And like, I was excited to go, obviously, still, but I just had it in my head that it's just going to be like very blasé that I'm even here. Like, just like treat me like a random cameraman. Like, yeah, what? Okay. Right, he was like the nicest guy ever.
Yeah.
And it took me by
Right.
and he had so much.
Dylan
Yeah, and he had so much time for me, and I walked out of the gym feeling like a dickhead because I was just like, oh God, I've got to stop judging people before I meet them.
There's judging people, and then there's, you know what I mean. Dylan Dennis has anyone in their right mind is not going to go into, you know, an in-person encounter with Dylan Dennis. I think, oh, he's going to be a sound guy.
Yeah,
He's purposely curated.
Yeah,
that. He's purposely
he is.
built a personality to make you think exactly what you thought.
Yeah,
going in.
100%. And he was just so nice after, and just like quite talkative, and made sure I had everything I needed. And I just remember leaving thinking, yeah, that guy's pretty cool actually. And then like 4 months later, he does something ridiculous, and I'm just like, you're an idiot.
So a bit more of a serious, deeper note to finish.
How long have we been going?
Over 2 hours now. I'm just going to quickly check this.
Really?
Yeah.
It feels like I've been doing it half an hour. I feel like I've not even said anything.
Yeah. So we've talked about the concept of God a lot, the universe.
I had a question that I wanted to ask you actually, because in one of your combos before, you believe. What do you think to Christopher Hitchens?
I'm going to be completely honest. I have no idea who that is.
Okay, well, tonight I'm going to send you on a Hitchens
on a rabbit hole.
Okay. Yeah. Hitchens is like a very notable, amazing kind of thinker. And he speaks on the topic of religion, like used to speak on it. He's dead now. He died a couple of years ago, I think, maybe a little bit longer. But the way he puts things forward is just some of the best, like, analytical responses to things that I've ever heard. He's very like matter of fact. He's like a gay guy. Looks like who's the guy that worked on QI?
Stephen Fry?
Yeah, Stephen Fry. It looks a bit like Stephen Fry, I suppose. Bit of a deeper voice, but like he talks about most of his studies and practices and talks are all about how religion is bad.
Okay.
But like he does it when he gets his points across, they're just like amazing to listen to. Whether you like believe it or not, it's not really the point. It's just fascinating to listen to somebody break something down in a way you've not heard before, that you can take a certain percentage out of. And he speaks on how, because you said you think the world's better off for religion, he would categorically disagree with you in saying that the world is not better for religion, even though it has provided a better life for many people. But these people are usually at wit's ends when they find God. It's like a last-ditch effort in having something in your heart. Do you know what I mean? And I've always kind of believed that as a atheist, even though I don't really know what that word means anymore.
Would you class yourself as an atheist?
What's an atheist mean now? Because I don't... because I've had different meanings. Because I've said previously in my life that I'm an atheist, and then someone's been like challenged me on it. Like, oh, so you think this and that? And I'm like, no. And I'm like, oh, okay, so maybe I'm not.
Knowing you, I wouldn't say you're an atheist, but these are just my definitions. I would say an atheist is someone that does not believe, and this really starts getting very nuanced very quickly. An atheist to me is someone that does not believe in God. And what's God to me? God is a higher power that, you know, is not bound by the laws of science as we know it.
I just don't like the word God.
Yeah. Why not?
Because it attaches itself to a man.
Okay.
A figure. And that's not what I'm talking about. Like you said, and that's why I've swapped out, when I say God in conversations, I'll swap it out for the universe. I don't even know what that means, but it feels more relatable.
Sorry to interrupt, but I can use God and the universe interchangeably. I don't believe there's a big man up in the clouds.
No, but when people say that, that's
when
the
you say
imagery
God, that's what people think
that I get in my head.
Yeah,
and then I think, oh, so if they're saying the word God, maybe they literally think God, and then I just get
I wonder how many people think that these days, because I only know my perspective.
I think a lot.
To me, I just think I think there is some kind of director at play.
Because if someone says to you, "Do you believe in God?" most of the population aren't going to break that down into what do you mean by the word God?
Yeah,
they're just going to be like,
yeah,
like like believe in it and
To me, that's what I mean, and I've messed about with a lot of psychedelics at this point. Engaged in lots of meditative practices. I feel like my pursuits in trail running, the mountain running challenges I've done, and pushing myself in jiu-jitsu, I feel like they've also helped me on this path. Basically, I'm always on this journey of trying to know God. I think that's, if someone asks me what's your goal in life, I think my ultimate goal is to know God, whatever that may be. And at the moment, how I would describe my understanding of God is, all I really know is I've had lots of depictions, like I said, through psychedelic experiences, through meditative experiences. I've seen lots of depictions in the form of the Buddha, in the form of the Christian God, as it's displayed to us. But all I can say is I feel as though I know there is some kind of director at work in this world. Things don't just happen by chance. There is something out there that's, you know what I mean, moving the chess pieces. That's maybe that's not a very good explanation. That's
no.
I
know what you're saying. I feel like, it annoys me a lot when I see fighters finish their fight and the first person they want to thank is God, and I'm like, mate, thank yourself.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you.
You did
that's
this,
what I was
going
to ask you about the place of God's place, religion's place in fighting, because we talked about how...
Well, fighting's kind of somewhat a bit of a sacrificial, like, holy battlefield. Do you know what I mean? And I can understand why people go to God, because
I think
sometimes
99%...
getting beaten to death is a close near. Do you know what I mean?
It's the closest you're going to get to
an
experience in this life, out of this life.
Yeah. And I don't know, I think a lot of people in MMA are a bit fucked up. I've had not great upbringings, things where they've needed a support figure. A lot of women in MMA have got very traumatic backgrounds, but then you correspond that to religion, and like I was sat down in the park the other day with Joe, and these preachers came over to me and Joe and started chatting to us about God and stuff like that, and I was humouring them back, like just talking to them, and I said to them, but the thing is, a lot of you guys only find God when you're at wit's end. Like maybe you've gone to jail or something and you've thrown your life away and you need a new purpose. This is where religion's great, and I agree that religion can be a beautiful thing, but it's usually a beautiful thing. See, again, like I've got to say this with respect as well, but like there was a debate that I was listening to with Christopher Hitchens talking about, is God, people that believe in God are, or God is for the less intellectual people. I can't remember how he put it, but when the title of the debate that is, but what he's essentially talking about is that most people that believe in God in the stereotypical sense of what religion is, like word for word through the Bible, these people are people that have had a hard life. Nothing's been easy for them. They've been in jail, they've done bad things, and they just come to a point where they need a moral compass. And the Bible provides that for a lot of people. It gives people hope that didn't have hope. It gives people like morality that didn't have morality. It gives people a new self-worth because they understand why they're here now. And all of these things are like, they're great, and I champion everybody in those positions to feel those things. And if that's what religion does for those people, that's great. But I think to class any one particular religion as this is the way, this is the one, this is the way we live, is crazy to me. I feel like you can take bits from every religion and not even be religious and take value from it. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That's how I look at it, because it's a book of metaphors, really, and you take it as you want. It's not some fucking live and die by this book. That's not how I see it. But if you want to see it like that, and that improves your life and gives you a better feeling of who you are, then you should totally go and do that. But it shouldn't be like some forced doctrination.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
And even like when people are like, the guys that were preaching to me, I said, how did you get in religion? How did you find God? And they told me some sad story of how he was in jail and how he come out of jail, and I was like, well, there you go, just prove my point.
Do you think, though, it's a bit like the thing you were talking about with gratitude, that these people that are in this position, they've lost perspective on how privileged they are to be in this position?
I don't think they ever even had it. And
yeah.
I think the first taste of it is through that, and now they're like, whoa, I feel this thing that I've never felt and didn't even know existed, and I got it through this medium, the Bible. But there's other ways you can access that stuff.
Yeah.
With that.
Oh yeah. No, I agree. I don't think you need to follow a mainstream religion. I don't think you need to be. I don't think to be religious, you don't need to read the Bible or read the Quran. I would say I'm a very religious person. I don't prescribe to any religion.
So what do you mean by religious then?
Just that I feel as though I'm in touch with God. That it sounds very arrogant.
I feel like it's very, what you're getting at is the spiritual side.
Yeah, well, that's it. This is where it comes down to semantics. But sorry, just to say,
it is semantics that you're losing.
Yeah. What I was going to say is, because I said I feel like I'm in touch with God. That's what I feel. That's why I would say I'm religious. I was going to say I believe in God. It sounds arrogant to say I know God, as though like I'm some guru. But I don't like saying I believe in God, because to me, belief is something. You know, you believe something because you don't know it. If you know something, you don't believe it because there's no reason. You know, to believe or not believe is based upon you've got some evidence in front of you and you're kind of taking a guess.
Yeah.
You're saying, I think that's true.
Yeah.
To me, I feel like I've, you know what I mean? Again, this sounds very arrogant, met God, but through, you know, meditation, through not even meditation, take meditation and psychedelics out of it, just through life, I feel like I've connected with something higher than, you know, a higher power, a director in this world. So that's what I mean, just to clarify for people when I say I know God, that's why I'm religious. That's what I mean when I say I know God. I don't feel as though I'm some guru,
no, I know what you're
coming
saying.
to Jesus Christ or Muhammad.
Yeah.
But yeah, to go back to what I was saying, you're talking about the people, everyone seems to find religion through being in a bad place. Maybe it's a case of, a lot of people find God because they need God, but really God can be a beneficial driver, a beneficial force in everyone's life. It's just when life's going great, you don't have that kind of appreciation, not in touch, because you don't need God in those moments. But if you were to let the idea of director, a higher power, the divine, into your life in those good moments, it would make them even better.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. I feel like I don't think anybody will understand what God is, and I don't think think you can get to know the God either, because I think it's a construct of your consciousness to some degree as well.
That's as much as as much as I say I feel like I know God. At the end of the day, like I'm stabbing in the dark as much as everyone else. We're all having our own experiences of this existence. And we could be completely deluded in what we think. Things that we feel as though we're absolutely sure on and we know, we could be absolutely wrong.
This is another reason. Like, there's so many things out there from Earth or civilization just being.
This could be a simulation.
That's what I was about
Life
to say.
could be. It was a
Yeah. I was just about to say, like this could literally be a simulation, and we're just living in a vessel at the moment, and there's a whole other world waiting for us when this passes out. And you know, we could even be like a mutated experiment from aliens. We could be like, we could just be like a form of planet Earth's evolution of having animals and having oxygen and water on the Earth. Like, it could be that simple.
It could be, you know, my life so far, your life so far could just be one long dream in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But I think what we've got in our
Your real
brains,
life.
the ability to think and to be conscious, it's that grapples with the idea of a God and wanting to find meaning to this, when really there doesn't need to always be a meaning for something, and especially in the universe. Like,
yeah.
do you know what I mean? It just is.
Yeah.
As they say. Or what's the quote? Can't fucking remember. Yeah, I can't remember. But yeah, no, I grapple with the idea that initially I didn't believe in God, and I thought when you die, you just die. And I still kind of think that to a certain degree. I don't think anything happens when you die. I think it's just infinite blackness, just like it was before you were born. You feel exactly, death is just going to be the exact same feeling as before you were born, and that doesn't feel like anything or nothing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. How would you describe your interpretation of your experiences on psychedelics?
Interesting, not life-changing. I was more fascinated that the mind can show me these things than what these things mean.
Yeah. So you don't necessarily feel when you take psychedelics that you're having some kind of conversation or connection with anything outside of the world as we know it. Okay.
No.
Yeah.
I think
that's really interesting.
I feel like there's just like being, everything in my head is just for me in my head, and that's it. I feel like there's nothing else to it. I think that, like, just because, I mean, the only thing that makes me curious about anything really is the fact that we all have similar trips. And like, where does that come? Why is it always Aztec-y, Egyptian vibes?
Well, that's why I said it's interesting, because I think, I'm not saying this to try and discount your experience.
No, of course.
But I think you're the first person that I've spoken to, the person that I know that through their psychedelic experiences doesn't feel as though they're connecting with something.
No, I don't. I just feel like
external or divine in that way.
No, I feel like someone's just put a new set of lenses on my head, and I'm just can see things differently.
So it's more like the human connection.
Yeah, so it's all about
the connection
me
between us and the world, rather than something.
Yeah. Just because I'm seeing shit when I close my eyes, that I'm not relating that to any higher power, or that I'm talking to God now, or I'm in His presence. Like, none of that, because I'm just having a trip on drugs. I understand that psilocybin can give you access to certain things, but ultimately I'm tripping on drugs.
Yeah.
Like, there's not really too much else to say about it. Like, I'm on drugs right now, tripping. It's very easy for me to say I'm in a spaceship and God's riding this through the meteors and I'm going to my promised homeland. Like you can think that, but ultimately
I'm finding the truth in life.
Yeah.
Like, this is the most gravitating and momentous thing that I can experience in life.
It might drop a few pennies for you in your life, like make you think about something that in a certain way you've never thought about. But ultimately, this is you versus you in your head. This is just your subconscious showing you a movie. Like, that's what's happening, in my opinion. And it's got zero to do with God, zero to do with the universe. If anything, it's an exploration on yourself and how you think. It's not I don't mix the two between some divine trip. That's kind of quite ancient thinking to me. Like that's how like tribesmen would analyze tripping. Like it would be like, oh my God, we've took this drink and I went to God and like he told me this. That's just an uneducated.
You don't think they're on something with that?
No. No, with psilocybin, no.
That's interesting. I'm glad we disagreed. That's the beautiful thing about conversations like this.
Psilocybin's fascinating. They're like, you know, it's the biggest organism in the whole world. Like mushrooms are.
Yeah.
You know, like some of them cover underneath the forests larger patches of space than 2 football fields, and they're communicating with that whole area of the land, like talking to the trees, talking to the plants. Like it's something powerful and something really unique and alien about mushrooms and truffles and that kind of organism. That's fascinating. But to eat it and then think, now I'm so special, I'm having this experience with God, I think is almost a bit deluded. And I feel like that's how our ancestors used to, you know, like a lot of like historical religious texts have since come out like, oh, they wrote this on some kind of like psychedelic. Do you know what I mean?
The biblical stories, when you put them in the context of psychedelic experiences, they start to make a lot of sense. Yeah,
and when you back then, how do you explain that? You don't. It's just like, oh, God gave it me. If there's a flood, oh, God wasn't happy. If there's a volcano, oh, God wasn't happy. Let's sacrifice something, or blah 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 blah. That's what that thinking is to me. If you're going to take some drugs, have these drugs, and then say you're having it's definitely a spiritual thing, psilocybin, but I don't think I'm in the presence of the creator if anything, I feel further away from the creator when I'm there. I'm like I'm in a different place where I shouldn't be, where like I'm like behind the computer,
you're like outside the rules.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, I feel like this is just between me and the drug, and to think it's anything else is my ego. Yeah. I feel like I want it to be. I want to be special. I want to be in it, but ultimately you're just tripping on drugs. Like that's the short and narrow of it, and you can define what a drug is, but that's what it is. It's like it's warping your reality, or some people think it's unwarping their reality. Whichever way you look at it, it's something between you and your subconscious, and they're the only things in the universe that know they're even happening. It's just you and your subconscious.
Bro, I could talk to you. I'd say until the sun goes down. It may have already gone down. We could genuinely do this all night long. But we're gonna have to call it there.
Yeah,
for today.
No problem. Thank
you so much for coming on. I really
feel like I fucking didn't give any straight answers there.
No.
And then I remember something, then I forget something.
No, it was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
All right, cool.
So thank you.
Pleasure, mate.
I really appreciate it.